Good evening. Welcome to regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board for Tuesday, October 15th, 2013. Call this meeting to order. If you'd all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, require roll call, please.
Trustee LaRue will be here shortly, so when he gets here, I'll mark him as arrived. Trustee Pompo.
Here.
Trustee Draft.
Here.
Trustee Trescott.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Lemata.
Here.
Staff present, Manager Gerard, and that's it.
Thank you, Clerk Rattari. Next item on our agenda is consent agenda. As you know, the consent agenda includes those items that typically do not require immediate board action. This evening includes approval of the prior meeting minutes of October 1st, received reports from the Roads Committee from August 13th, Roads Committee draft minutes from October 1, the Iron Ore Rec Authority minutes from August 28th, the Planning Commission meeting of September 25th, Sheriff's report of September, Fire Department activity report in September, the Fire Department officers draft minutes from September 4th, Fire Department draft meeting minutes of September 9th, US 41 Corridor Advisory Committee meeting minutes from September 10th, the September 2013 Water Production Report, the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority minutes of September 18th, and correspondence not requiring board actions, including Welcome to Medicare seminar offered, Marquette County Road Commission meeting on October 16th, the MTA 61st Annual Educational Conference and Expo slated for January 28th through 31 brochure is included, and the Iron Ore Heritage Trail land use order from the Sheriff's Department. Bills payable in the amount of $131,262.60. Are there any members of this board wishing to remove any items from the consent agenda for further consideration? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved. So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the remainder of the agenda. Are there any board members wishing to make changes to the agenda? Clerk Rattari.
Just a comment, I think, on our second forum discussion with that budget session. We should limit that to an hour. So we do have a closed session after that, so.
We will attempt to keep this meeting on order and finish by no later than 9:30.
I'll move,
Ernie?
I would like to move the manager's performance evaluation to either a work session or a special meeting, and that'd be the only item on that meeting.
And what do you want to do that for? Why can't we discuss it here, Ernie?
I just figure that we have to have an open discussion, and it never happens in that.
I've not requested closed session.
I'm not saying a closed session, I'm just saying a special meeting or a work session, and at that point in time, you can then make the decision whether it's going to be open or closed. in that. I see too much on the agenda right now, and I'm looking at moving that to some other point.
I'm not sure, I think that we have the agenda in the given time frame without an issue, so I'm not sure what your issue is and why I want to schedule a separate meeting for it. But you've asked, and I'll let the board consider it. Make the motion, Ernie.
I'll make the motion that we set a special work session or a special meeting for the review the performance of the manager.
Is there a second? Seeing none.
I'll support for discussion.
Okay. We have motion and support. Board member comment or discussion? Clerk Rattari?
my comment on this is, this agenda item is always just a performance report to the board. It can be a closed session item if the manager requests it. Historically, we've just reported the performance evaluation results to the public and go from there. I guess, I mean, if you, I think that discussion that Ernie would like is more of a goal setting than more of an evaluation, but those are just my comments on that.
Okay. Anyone else? Lynn?
Are we going to have any discussion about it like we usually do or not? Is it because that he didn't request a closed session that we're not going to talk about it?
It's on the agenda to be discussed, so, I mean, you can discuss or bring up anything you want on
Okay.
the agenda item.
Well, I guess, because Randy just said that it's just typically the report.
It is a report back. You've all had the opportunity to evaluate. You've submitted them. They have been compiled by the clerk. The performance evaluation has been delivered to Manager Gerard by myself and the clerk. You do have a copy of the overall performance evaluation that I emailed out to everybody today in your inbox. But we can, I mean, this is on the agenda for open discussion. You can discuss anything you want about it. And if the manager hasn't requested anything from closed session, you can bring up or talk about anything you wish to discuss. Diana?
To me, it doesn't matter if we do it today or another time.
Ernie, anything else to add?
No,
Dan?
It's just a report.
Oh, it just popped up. I just looked at it before I came in, it wasn't there.
I gotta go see it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Nothing else?
Mm-mm.
My thoughts on it are, it's here to discuss. If you don't have enough time to discuss it, we can always add it to another agenda. I didn't expect to set the 2014 goals. Last year, we finished those goals and started them for January 1 through the end of December 31st. I assumed we would do the same thing this year on as far as setting as goals. This was just a report to the board about what the performance evaluation was. But if Ernie feels the need for a special meeting, and it's the board's desire, we'll do so. We have a motion and a second. If there's no other board member comments, motion is to move the township manager's performance evaluation to a special meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No,
No.
no.
Motion's defeated. Anything else on the agenda that anybody wishes to make a change to?
I'll move to agenda as presented.
A second.
We have motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Agenda is approved. That brings us up to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to address the board may do so at this time. Wait for Sherry.
And I'm moving.
My name is Sherry Johnson. I live at 2272 Cherry Street here in the township. I had a good comment about our community room I bring a little girl to Little Lambs, and the teacher there said that she had a group here and she just loved the community center, was telling all the parents how great it is, even for the children. And I also, one night, observed something with the sheriffs. We put Warner Street through with the sidewalk for people to walk on. The sheriff's car was sitting on that waiting for speeders. There was a lady and her husband, a baby being pushed in a stroller with their dog, walking going to be close to them, and they were going to have to go out in the street. And I thought the purpose of that was, and I voted to have it done, was for walkers, not for anybody to be sitting on it. And that includes our sheriff. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. We'll make sure to mention it to the Sheriff's Department deputy.
Hi, my name is Buzz Tishill, and I'm here with Ron Pierce. We're from the City Insurance Agency in Marquette, and we would be here to entertain any questions the board may have in regards to the health insurance. We were asked to attend, so I thought we'd would come. I will tell you that we have met with Randy on, I think it's 6 occasions throughout the course of the year. We also met with Dennis and Randy and Ron and myself, trying to figure out a path and what would be the best avenue to take for the upcoming 2014 health insurance. As we all know, we can call it Obamacare, that most of us are familiar with, or the Affordable Care Act, whichever you prefer. But I will tell you some of the actions that we have done, that Randy has done with Dennis, and I believe the board here. We have, you have opted out to move your renewal date to December 1st, 2013 renewal date. Therefore, you are locking in those rates until November 30th of 2014. By doing this, you have received an 8% decrease in your premium from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Now, we felt it'd be beneficial to, I'm going to call it kicking the can down the road, because with the ever-looming changes in healthcare, we were going to be in compliant, as well as the township was going to be in compliant by moving forward on this. So I think it was a prudent move and decision by your board to do so. So on December 1st, your premium payment will show a 8% decrease in your current premium. However, for 1/1, you will see the 8% decrease, but there is a tax and fees that will be accrued on your bill, and that's from the federal mandate for the Affordable Care Act. So your net savings, if you will, from your current premium with the taxes and fees looks about 2%. Now, we have emailed to Randy, and I will pass it on to Dennis and the board here, your rates, renewal rates that will start for the 1st of December. So, not exactly sure. I noticed that it said 3 minutes, and I think we would stay as long as you would want us here to discuss and move in that direction. I will tell you, was it a week ago or 2 weeks? Approximately 2 weeks ago, we did meet with the employees. We had a luncheon here to go over the proposals and also the Affordable Care Act with the employees here at the Township Hall. I think it was well attended. Randy, you may be able to comment how many were there. I think you had 15 employees that
Majority of the
attended.
staff.
We spent approximately 2.5 hours with them, going over their questions and concerns that they may have. So we were asked to attend, and that's why we're here. So,
Buzz,
yes, sir.
we didn't have you on the agenda because we weren't, you know, it all kind of came up. But we do have a closed session this evening, and we're going to start talking a little bit about the direction that the board wants to take us in collective bargaining sessions. We have both our collective bargaining groups, contracts are up for the end of the year.
Yes, sir.
So the reason that we asked you to be here, and we'll grant the board the opportunity inside of this public comment period to ask any pertinent questions they may have, but because the whole Affordable Care Act, nobody's really sure about where that's taking us, you know, as they're sorting this through. And while Washington's on a lockdown, we're even more uncertain about what it will look like in their negotiations. I just want to open up to the board and allow them to ask any questions. If you
Certainly. We'll try to answer anything we can.
So, anyone with Lynn?
I just want to confirm that we still have the 20% employee contribution then, even with locking the rate or the renewal date at December 1st?
That will occur on January 1st.
Okay.
That is correct, which was mandated by the governor. So the employees will be contributing 20% of the cost. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about health costs, not dental and vision, which is a volunteer program. So the actual health care cost will be paid 20% by the employees. That is correct. I'm not sure how you would take them. Is it a payroll deduction? Is that what you'll be using?
Well, it's not currently. The board hasn't acted on that. I'm presuming that that'll be one of the things we'll be discussing later tonight. However,
Right.
the governor's mandate, although it is a mandate, there is no penalty for us for whatever we do. The penalty is if you don't subscribe to the 20% contribution from employees, is you don't get your statutory revenue sharing, which we don't get anyway. All we get is constitutional. So there is no penalty.
Right.
For us. The direction that the board decides to take in closed session will be what the negotiating team will do, and that is certainly one of the things that's out there that's available. But it's not an automatic. I mean, it isn't something that's mandated that as of January 1st, everybody pays 20%. That's a decision of the governing bodies.
One of the things that what we will tell you that we've seen in some of the discussions that we've had with other clients throughout the Upper Peninsula is that Under 50, the group that's under 50, you can opt out and not pay the cost. You're not, by law, you're not governed to do that. However, I will tell you that in keeping employee morale and keeping a key employee that's been here quite some time, those benefits are something that they work for. They're something that they think about when they are looking out for employment. Now, I'm not saying you're going to have a run on people going to leave, but I am going to say that consideration from the board in your closed session, I would certainly take that into effect. I've had people say, well, we're going to just put everybody at 28 hours. We don't have to offer it at that point. Well, you certainly can do that, but you're going to have to pick up the slack for those extra hours and more people that you're going to have to put on the payroll. So you are definitely in a juggling act, and obviously the board has some decisions to make. And the law as it stands tonight, anyhow at 6:30 when I left my house, it will be going into effect on 1/1. Now, listening to the radio on the way here, we just talked about it. I'm not even sure if it's going to be in effect for 1/1 because they're still fighting at it today in the Senate and the House. So, but as we stand today, the best information we can give you is that it will be going into effect on 1/1. There are some things that have been kicked down the road, if you will, as I call it, kicking the can down the road. And one of them would have been, if you've heard, that there'd be no penalties. That would be for large groups of over 50, and those penalties were assessed at $2,000 a person or employee. Now that has been changed to 2015, so that's been kicked down the road to 2015. And in the Affordable Care Act, as it stands, I think there's several key things that are important. There's no more discriminating as far as somebody's health. You know, if somebody has health issues, they can't just say, oh, we're going to rate your whole group up because of that person with regards to the Blue Cross. So I think there's definitely some good points into the law, but we're going to see how it pans out and see what actually happens with it. I hope I know it's a long-winded answer, but I'm trying to give you some examples of what's going on out there right now as we see it.
Other questions for Lon and Buzz? Seeing none? Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's any questions, certainly easy to reach. We do respond, I think, fairly well with the board and also any of the board members. And so if you do need to reach us, certainly can email us or contact Randy from my cell phone number, and I'd be more than happy to entertain a phone call.
I'm going to ask you to come in and just meet with the board at some point during our conversations about negotiations.
Absolutely. Just what we do need, though, is like a week's notice, because we do plan a week ahead on our travels. I was telling Lynn earlier that I'll be in Houghton tomorrow, and I had a conflict with a church group tonight that I was going to be presenting at, so we kind of rearranged that for another night this week. So it's getting down to the wire on the healthcare, and you know, groups are concerned and what they can or can't do. So we would like at least a week's notice to schedule ourselves to meet with you. It would not be a problem, though.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, move to board member comment. Those members of the board wishing to make comment may do so at this time. Lynn?
I don't know if anybody saw the paper tonight. I just thought I'd throw it out.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it.
The city with possible ordinance for truck traffic. It also says in here that they've talked to surrounding municipalities, and they haven't talked to this board. I don't know if they've talked to the manager, but we haven't been included in any of the discussion. I guess I'm just kind of disappointed that it's not in my backyard in their mentality. You know, they're all about bringing in business and taking care of everything until it hits their backyard. And then everybody else has to deal with the problem. And that's too bad. So maybe they'd consider talking to us at some point. That's it. Thank you.
Diana? Attorney?
Two items. I attended the Marquette Township Business Association at noon today. Two things came up. One is that when we met with them in the past, they were very appreciative of that, and they're looking forward to another meeting. They thought it was very beneficial to that group. And that. So they're moving forward. They got 46, 48 members. They've got a number of them that they're talking about, so they're moving forward on that at the same time. So they're interested in working with us in almost anywhere, any way we can think of in that, and
Great.
support us any way they can. So.
Good, thanks, Ernie. Pete?
No comment.
Dan? Clerk Secretary?
Only comment I'll have is, before our next meeting, the time will have changed, so it'll go back an hour. And this year, I do not have a November election, so that's going to be quiet in the township this year, so, for election time, so. With that note, we did schedule the board meeting for that Wednesday. And if the board would like to keep it there, that would be fine. If not, we can change it back, but my camera operator is not going to be here that Tuesday evening now, so I would hope to keep it on that Wednesday night.
Okay. Does anyone have an issue with leaving it on that Wednesday night for the Tuesday? We're okay with it.
Okay.
There's no other board member comment. The only comment I have is, Yale, and you guys all just got it into your inbox about 30 seconds ago. I have a copy of the ordinance, the proposed ordinance for the city on their truck ordinance. If you look at the route, it says that they can come down through US 41, Front Street to Washington, and then go west to the city limits, or they can use 553 down to McClellan, down to Wright Street, and then go west out of the city limits. So what it does is it blocks any north-south route from truck traffic attempting to head up 550 or go to Powell Township. I'm not surprised. It's not our battle right now. It'll go. I'm sure there's various other parties who are interested. I certainly would be. I'm trying to forward the information up to Powell Township. The city's meeting on it right now and having a conversation. It's the first time it's been presented to any of the city commissioners. I'm sure that there will be some trucking concerns with an interest. We'll be there to speak out. If I was from Powell Township, I would certainly be there to discuss it, because if I own a business up in Powell Township, you're going to make it real hard for me to be able to receive goods and services unless they want to come around and drive up through 510, which that would end up on a delivery charge. But we'll continue to move forward and continue to look for regional solutions to traffic issues. One of the things that I've often recommended and will still be willing to work with the city on is to develop a regional trucking ordinance or a joint trucking ordinance between Marquette Township and Negaunee Township and the city of Marquette. I think it would make sense. But all parties have to be willing to sit down and discuss it and not act unilaterally as is occurring right now. So we'll see where it goes. Maybe the commissioners will take a look at the recommendation and realize that it isn't appropriate, or maybe they'll realize that it is. Clearly it's in response to try to keep Lundin mining trucks from rolling through that small corner by NMU. It probably is why they put so much time and effort. They held a dozen meetings earlier this year to discuss putting an alternative heavy haul route through Marquette Township, through the Forestville area, without having us sit at the table. Again, disappointing, but not surprising. They're doing what they think is in the best interest of city residents. And we'll see where it leads to as the commission looks at it further.
I didn't think about it. I was thinking about it when I read it this afternoon, that Northern Michigan University is bringing their boilers online, and they're going to have how many of those big trucks coming through on a daily basis. So it's going to be interesting how that's all going to play out in that too. So
They do have provisions in their ordinance if you are picking up or delivering that you have to stay on the truck route and then take the most direct route to and from wherever your pickup or delivery is. Clearly, it's to block a north-south route through the city. I mean, they don't have one. You're having a truck route that goes McClellan to Wright Street, and then you have to take a left and drive out to the township. It serves nobody. There's clearly, it's not really a truck route. No trucks would do that. If they're going to do that, they're just going to run down 41. It doesn't make any sense. There's no real benefit to it. The idea of McClellan as a truck route was to tie into the north-south route to be able to get them out to County Road 550 and move north. Like I said, it's premature. We'll see where the city commission takes it. It'll be interesting to watch and see where they go. We'll close board member comment. There is no first forum discussion. We're going to move to agenda item number 9A, Township Facilities Construction Update. With regards to the Fire Rescue Center and the Public Works Center, we do have in attendance Jim Clark from Cornerstone Development, as well as Bromley Hall from Hall Contracting. And Randy, you want to open it up?
Sure, we can kick it off. Am I broadcasting? Can you hear me? Can you hear out there?
No.
Okay.
Can't.
As you mentioned, excuse me, Bromley Hall and Jim Clark are here in the audience. Mr. Hall is just completing the fire rescue, the new fire rescue facilities. I believe we have one building in the process for the exhaust system that's been installed in the new facility, and there's still some masonry work that's being done. But other than that, the fire department, the new fire rescue center is complete, is occupied. The department is operating out of there. And I don't know that there's anything more that Mr. Hall wants to add to that, but he certainly can. The Public Works facility, I did send out an email late this afternoon. Attorney Zappa, who is here with us this afternoon, completed a review of the proposed design-build agreement, which is very similar to the agreement we had for the first two phases of the project, for the Township Hall and Community Center, as well as the Fire Rescue Center. With some very minor changes, because the third phase of the project does not occur within the Cornerstone Business District, so the provisions within the Cornerstone Business Park do not apply, so those had to be removed from the agreement, and the fee structure is slightly different because there are no land transfers involved in this project. It's a standalone project. Those were incorporated and sent out to you this afternoon. I know it was late. We did have a meeting this afternoon, Mr. Page, myself, with Mr. Hall and Mr. Clark, discussing the agreement. They're in a position going forward with the project that we really need to have an agreement for them to start ordering some of the building materials. And the reason I'm asking for you to consider that this evening is if we wait till the first meeting in November, that's 2.5 weeks away. And that further delays the orders of materials, and we've got weather coming. So that's why it's out there for you. I will have Mr. Clark and Mr. Hall bring you up to date basically on where we are with the Public Works facility. At your last meeting, you saw the schematics, the site plan, the basic building plan, and the floor plan for the facilities, the cost breakout. All of the bids are in now. They've all been tabulated. We have basically a final projected cost. We are not anticipating in this project change orders. The reason we're not is because, unlike the first two projects that we worked on, the first two phases, we have had time to go through and do more complete engineering prior to it coming to you. We're not on the same kind of a time frame, so all of the add-on items that we dealt with in the first two phases, the wish list, if you will, of items that we added in through value engineering have already been done in this project. So all of that engineering is completed, all the design work is done. There will be some very limited as we always do, we'll continue the design, the value engineering as we go forward when we have some questions come up about various pieces of equipment. But by and large, we are not anticipating any change orders with this project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim and to Bromley.
Good evening, board members. I'm Jim Clark, manager, Cornerstone Development. Item 9A1, I just wanted to say right now there is a billing in progress. We're going to try and get all the contract numbers from all the subcontractors. I don't know if that's me or not. And we're looking to, at your next board meeting, have your final billing and your final closeout with the waivers to review. The occupancy permit has been received. I think I reported that last meeting. With regard to the Public Works Center, you received a few communications, and again, the communication late this afternoon. I guess you've had time to review fully. The one that Randy sent out last week, reviewing the project summary. It's a one-page document. I guess I'd like to turn over the detailed description of that over to Bromley Hall, because he did most of the groundwork or the field work. getting the contract bids.
Did that one-page sheet go out to all the board members?
It's in your packet.
Yeah, it went out with the packet.
It wasn't included in the online packet. It was not.
I got a 982.
It's not on the online packet. It wasn't, anyone who had it printed out, it's not on the, it wasn't online.
That, I don't know how it didn't get online, but it is in the printed packets.
Okay, go ahead.
So basically, just so I'm on the same page here, the final contract price summary is what was not included? Is that what we're talking about?
Apparently it was not in the online version, it is in the printed packets.
Okay. Yeah, just to take a quick step back here, 9A1. We have compiled the majority of the closeout documents. The work has been completed, short of some masonry corrections. We have the majority of the closeout documents, as I said. And those consist of operations and maintenance manuals specific to the building, as-built drawings, and final waivers of Montague. We had intended to submit a payment for this meeting. Mr. Clark was out of town. Weren't able to get it in. And what that payment was for the exhaust system, which was basically the final piece to the payout. So what we'll do is we'll have all the closeout documents compiled by Thursday of next week to submit with the board packet. Won't actually, obviously be submitting all the documents, so won't have any rules or that, but we will have waivers of liens and the final closeout, final payment and retainage release. Should be able to put that one to bed then.
Before you move on, Bromley, does anyone have any questions for Bromley on the final closeout on the fire department? Seeing none, you can move to the public works, new public works facility. And I know we ran into some issues over there, unanticipated issues in regards to rock and water, right?
It was mainly what it was, stormwater management from that site. One thing I will say is that you are still able, we were not in the Badger district there, so we weren't under jurisdiction of the drain commissioner. We were able to still follow some of the historical drainage patterns on that site, which kind of went over the hill. Existing, there wasn't a whole lot of hard surface there, so there was a lot of saturation on that site. But what's been taken into consideration in this was to basically, you're not allowed to discharge onto the county roads. What we've done, it was engineered where basically we brought it into a retention pond on the north side of the property. I don't know if you noticed that in the drawings. It's piped underground through a number of catch basins into the existing county storm drain. So it's all subsurface as it goes there. So we're not actually discharging anything through any historical drainage patterns, which I think was the thing to do in this case.
Ernie?
That was what we talked about the last meeting, Overstar, $141,000.
Yes, that is correct. That was part of the scope of their work.
Yeah.
which they've got a good majority of the underground piping in already. I see that they've got some of the catch basins in. We've got some inspections at the county level, the county road commission that still have to be done as far as terminations into their storm sewer. But a good majority of the piping is done already.
So from us this evening, Randy, what you're really looking for is on the proposed agreement that was included from Attorney Zappa. We're looking for permission from the board to execute that agreement this evening.
Approval go forward with execution of that agreement authorizing the supervisor and clerk to sign. So that will release then Mr. Hall and Mr. Clark to start acquiring materials for construction.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other board member comment or questions?
Being we got so late, you didn't have time to really look at a lot of this stuff. But, looking at the comments from the attorney, on page 2, he's talking about, there's obviously a built-in price markup for overhead and profit in the full budgetary figure, which at this time remains incomplete to the proposed by Cornerstone.
No.
They says they want to, township undoubtedly want to address that percentage, and the final figures are being negotiated. So, the question I have, what are those figures and what are the percentages that we're talking about?
If you look at page 3 of the agreement, the large red paragraph in the center of the page. 5%.
Like I say, I happened to jump on the computer at 6 o'clock, and that was the only time I had it, so.
Yeah, we received it at about 2:30 this afternoon.
So by accepting this, are we accepting the prices and everything else that's
Yes.
laid out here?
Correct.
So really, at this point in time, the last meeting, we were talking about $1.1 million. This one's at 1.3 million. Now you add the 141,000 that we've already approved, and the 300,000 that they've already had to pay. So we're pushing almost 1.7 million on that building. And that's a long ways from the 1 million that we originally talked about at the beginning of that. We're talking over $700,000 difference in that.
That's true. You'll have a building about 600 square feet larger than your current new fire department at half the cost.
Can I add one thing in? The prior approvals for the 141,000 for the site work and the concrete, these numbers are inclusive of those, so it's not over and above.
Not in addition.
That's included in that 1.3?
It is included.
The 1.341.
That's the complete price.
And I also would like to point out that, also within the, this is actually an amendment to the current contract. It follows the same contractual format. The only thing we needed to modify were the provisions that were specific to this building, which Mr. Gerard outlined. But I do want to point out also that because we have final drawings and in anticipation of not seeing many change orders, we actually made a concession downward of 10% on the change order markups. So if there are change orders, it will be at 10%, not at 20%. So we made a concession for that.
And the other question I have is I'm looking at this, and at the last meeting, we were talking about 50,000 from the water, 50,000 from the wastewater, which is 100,000. And you project that out into the future, you're talking 11, 12, 13 years to pay this off, something like this here. And we have a balloon payment coming probably about 6.5 years, and we don't know what that interest rate's gonna be at that point in time. So it could be a lot more than we're anticipating at this point in time.
The minimum that Public Works, Mr. Page is here, he can speak to it, but that 100,000 a year would be the minimum that Public Works would be contributing to their project. You know, as you'll recall, we don't have a required payment due other than interest. We don't have a required payment due until 2015. So as we've talked in the budget process, we will be capturing from all of the budgets as much as we possibly can over the next 2 years to pay the principal down with no interest. So, you know, this has all gone into the process. Now, obviously, the cost of the facility is higher than what we anticipated. But as you'll recall, when you had that original $688,000 construction estimate, that was prior to any investigation, prior to them being in the building at all, looking at anything. And what we encountered in that building was significantly more than what we anticipated. The change of use, simply the change of use from the fire emergency use to the public works use, that change of use in and of itself cost a lot of money. Once we got into it and got the inspectors in and applied the new codes that are now in effect, that required us to do a lot more than we anticipated. The square footage footprint, basically, that has expanded through this process to control water, to provide the workspace that the public works facility is going to need, basically squared the building off. As you'll recall, it was not going to be squared. There was going to be an indention in the back. It was going to be kind of an unusual shape. It is now squared off. We've maximized the use of the property and the facility. Some of the bigger issues is the building's now required to be sprinkled. We did have to replace almost all of the wiring, if not all of the wiring. Most of the plumbing, some of the heaters that we anticipated still being able to use, we're replacing. There were a number of issues once we got into the building and started doing analysis of what was really there, aside from the drainage issues, increased the cost. We did spend a lot of time Supervisor Limita was involved in some of the discussions, but we did spend a lot of time analyzing the site once we got on it, trying to make a determination of, is this really a site that we should be using? Getting into that discussion. And basically, what the determining factor was is if we did not utilize that site and reconfigure that building, what would we do with it? It has extremely limited uses, and we would have ended up basically with a mess that we would have been the owner of for a long time. So we opted that even though the cost was higher, just about twice as much as what we anticipated, it was in the long-term best interest of the township to continue at that site rather than acquiring another site and trying to market the one we had. So it's, is it more than we anticipated? Yes. Is it still within our ability to fund on the basis that we put it? Yes. Will it possibly take longer than 7 years to complete? Yes, just like the fire department might. But we do have a guaranteed revenue stream from Public Works to pay this off.
I think the biggest thing is bringing up, because the original dollar amounts now are larger.
Correct.
There's no way to stop it. I think the direction we're going maybe is good. I just want to make sure the public understands why we've got a big increase in cost at this point in time. And then rather than just say, okay, here's what it was, there's a new one, and not have any background on it.
And that's true, and the Planning Commission did spend a fair amount of time on this as well, and ultimately approved the site as a special use because of the zoning conditions of that particular piece of property, changing from an emergency use to a public works use. It is a different use in a residential district, and even at that, it was our combined opinion, basically, that it still made more sense for us to stay on that site and utilize the skeleton of what we had, even though it was more costly than what we anticipated. It was still less costly than building new somewhere else.
Other questions? Roger?
Not sure if I'm broadcasting.
You are.
Just one point of clarification, although you got the most recent version just late this afternoon, this was something that I compiled back in May of 2013. So only the things that are in red are the new things that you should be seeing for the first time. And the reason that there are some changes, I was asked to make those this morning and was able to do that for you for tonight's meeting, is because of the amount of time that has elapsed, there are certain things that were no longer pertinent. For example, we were anticipating that much of the work was going to be at least commenced, if not completed, while the fire department was still occupying the structure. So there was a whole host of provisions in there that essentially could be eliminated, removed, because it has no bearing anymore. Also, we were initially contemplating that it would be occupied by August 31 of 2013. We changed that to put a new date in that's to be mutually determined upon final receipt of the bids and the engineering and so forth. So, in essence, the changes are really quite few from what had been presented before. There's the 5% administrative fee, and then in turn the reduction of the profit and overhead fees on the change orders are the two big ones, probably, along with the date changes and removal of the language due to just the amount of time that's elapsed.
It has been longer, excuse me, it has been longer than anticipated. And the only The other comment that I would make is on the last page of the agreement, 17.11.8. That paragraph makes reference to the executive summary. That is what's in your packet at 9.2. That is the executive summary. That's what would be appended to the agreement.
Other questions? Seeing none, Ernie, I think you're right. I mean, it's tough when you look at what we had initially decided that was gonna be $688,000 with a $300,000 purchase price. We knew we were gonna be around $1 million. We're coming in considerably higher. But it certainly, we can still pay off this building moving forward with the same amount that we've been setting aside for the last few years, other than when the board removed it from 2 budget sessions a few years back. That same $100,000 will still make the payment that we need to make. It will take us a few more years to pay it off than we had anticipated, but with the financing package that we put together to finance this 3-phase project, right now we've got some really cheap money, and being able to pay off as much as we can possibly pay on that principal balance for the next 7 years will certainly have a great impact on whatever the interest rates are going to be 7 years from now and when we need to refinance it. But I think it's a good question.
Well, quite frankly, at that point, when it comes up 7 years from now, we may not simply refinance. We may decide to bond at that point and not pay interest, sell bonds, so municipal bonds. So I mean, there are a number of options to take a look at, but it gives us 7 years to pay off as much as we possibly can.
So we have a motion, a second, to approve the agreement, have the clerk and supervisor sign it as presented.
Where does this resolution become involved with?
The
That was
next
attached
page?
to this.
That's on the,
It's the next item.
yeah.
I'm sorry, it's item C, 10C
Yeah, 10C.
is the resolution.
It shouldn't have been attached in there. So we
Okay.
have a motion and a second to authorize clerk and supervisor to sign the agreement as presented and updated from legal counsel. If there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
For those of you keeping score, the Tigers lost 1-0. Next item on our agenda is,
I just had a question for Clerk Rattari. Then you're going to update what got uploaded to the website with all these other documents in it?
Yeah, I'll talk to Andrew, and we'll put together that full packet,
Okay.
make sure it's replaced.
So the public knows what we're talking about.
So it's replaced.
Thank you.
the next item on our agenda is continued discussion of Sheriff's Activity Report 2014 Law Enforcement Contract Considerations. Manager Gerard.
This is a follow-up basically to the discussion that occurred at the last meeting. I think when Sheriff Lovelace was here, he had a number of good suggestions in terms of how to address this. As you may or may not know, there's at least one township that has done a special assessment, and that's being challenged in the courts currently, so we're going to see how that pans out. Special assessment specifically for law enforcement for retail fraud. We will be negotiating our 2014 contract here within the next 2 weeks, so you should be seeing a draft of that coming back to you at your first meeting in November. And we will be addressing that kind of law enforcement activity in that contract with a proposal for you to consider. So beyond that, you know, there were, I think the board members that were here at the last meeting heard some commentary from the sheriff about some ideas that he had that I think have some significant merit to them.
Okay. Any questions for Manager Gerard? Lynn, go ahead.
Are we going to get together with them then prior to this, or are you just going to give us the presentation first?
I wanted to send some information out to you because I just received from Captain Lemire some information in terms of the use, and it's a very, very small number of users that would be affected, and that is one of the things that we're going to be proposing to you is to sit down with them and ask them for input on alternatives. There is one that's far away, the major user. The others are over the course of 18 months, 3-4 times. 8 was the next highest, and then you got to a huge number.
Okay.
Anyone else? Well, let's face it, Walmart is the offending party. They consume 90% of our law enforcement, and because of their retail fraud policies, it does impact what we can provide and the additional services that we've been asked by residents to provide, and we need to just have that conversation and lay it out and move forward. And certainly we should do it while we have the contract up, so that we're prepared. Do we want to go another year like this, or do we want to make changes now so that we're prepared to meet the needs? And I think now's the time to act.
And we do have an annual contract. We do it on a one-year basis, so whatever happens for 2014 does not lock you in for 15 or 16, so you can adjust it as it goes. And realistically, it also contains a 30-day revision clause. So as we're going along, it could be revised as well.
Thanks, Randy. No other questions? We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is 10A. Consider the Peter White Public Library Advisory Council role. Board members, as you're aware, our representative for the Peter White Public Library Advisory Council is Trustee Durant, who took over from Mr. John Marks, I guess, for this year, starting in 2013. I will point out that we do have Library Director Pam Christensen here this evening. Thank you, Pam, for coming in. Lynn had asked for specific direction from the board and asked for it to be on the agenda so that we could have the opportunity to talk about what her role is moving forward with the advisory council and what kind of direction this board wanted to provide to Lynn to enhance our relationship with Peter White Public Library, and what kind of actions that we want to see coming out of the advisory council. I did invite Director Christensen here last week after we decided to put on the agenda for this week, because I thought it'd be important to have a representative from Peter White Public Library here to help further our dialogue. Lynn, I don't know if you want to just provide an update to the board, and then I'll ask Pam to go up to the podium and be able to provide us some feedback from Peter White Public Library side.
If you remember, I had a conflict for the last meeting, and Treasurer Johnson was kind enough to go in my stead and came back with pretty much the same type of report that I did in June, I guess it would have been, when I was there in June, and he went in September. Some of the items in the minutes from that TAC meeting are not exactly correct, but I did have board direction as to make the comments I did, and I believe Treasurer Johnson did too. So I guess I'm just kind of at a loss as to whether or not we want to continue this representation if it's not an advisory per se type board. There's no real interaction between, it's not an intermediary board in my mind between this body and the library board. And it's been suggested that if we have issues with the library board, we should address them to the library board, which kind of countermands the purpose of the advisory council in my mind. So if I'm misunderstanding or misrepresenting, please let me know, but I'll continue to go if you want me to. I'll go to the library board meetings if you want me to, or however you want me to proceed is fine.
Thanks, Lynn. Pam, I think, I guess my question to you would be, when the Township Advisory Council was formed, and what the, I don't know if they have articles, of organization or anything else, but if you could just provide this board with some background about how that came together and what you expect to see from the Township Advisory Council. I guess we're asking what our role is in a way, right? So, I mean, if you can help shed some light, that would be really helpful.
Township Advisory Council was formed, the first township millages that were passed in 1991. And at that time, the Township Advisory Council was established. And the Township Advisory Council does have bylaws. And basically what the bylaws allow, well, the mission of the Township Advisory Council is to recommend library services and methods for service delivery to townships served under contract by the Peter White Public Library. And the Township Advisory Council is the official name for the body representing the residents of all townships served by the library. And the way the Township Advisory Council was set up is each township with a contract with the library is allowed to appoint 2 members to the Township Advisory Council. The Township Advisory Council meets quarterly. They meet on the first Wednesday of March, June, September, and December at 5 p.m. We also, because some townships have had representatives who might not be able to make every meeting, do allow for the township to name an alternate. And an alternate can also attend the meeting, but if there's a vote, only 2 members from each township are allowed to vote. So if you had an alternate and all 3, the 2 representatives and the alternate came, only 2 of them could vote. So that's the way we have that set up. And you appoint your rep. So there really isn't anything that the Township Advisory Council can do to unseat a rep. In the past, there have been reps who have been appointed who didn't attend meetings, and we do try and let the township know, because if your representative doesn't show up, then obviously they aren't going to be able to take advantage of the discussion, etc. Before each meeting, there is a packet sent out. That packet generally includes, our statistics, budget information, the reports from the director and the various department heads, and also the minutes from the board meetings and the Township Advisory Council minutes. Basically, what the group is an advisory group to the board. The way it was originally set up was the president of the Township Advisory Council was an ad hoc member of the Board of Trustees and was asked to attend each board meeting. The library board meets monthly. And for a number of years, I think it was about 8 years, John Peterson from Marquette Township was the president of the Township Advisory Council, and he was very dependable at attending meetings. There were very few meetings of either the Township Advisory Council or the board that he did not attend. In the last several years, the way our Township Advisory Council members have preferred to do it is they still appoint, or they still vote in their officers, which are the president, a vice president, and a secretary. But what they've done is, traditionally, we hold a joint meeting of the Township Advisory Council with our Board of Trustees. It's generally at the March meeting. Sometimes it's done with the township meeting on the first Wednesday in March, and sometimes it's done with our board meeting, which is on the 3rd Tuesday of each month. And that's a joint meeting where the Township Advisory Council and the board both meet together. Lately, what's happened, because we have a couple of Township Advisory Council members who are gone for the winter, generally what happens is each board member takes a turn to attend the board meeting. So it's not always the president going to each board meeting. The Township Advisory Council members take a turn And that's worked out pretty well because instead of just hearing from one person, the president, you know, you get to meet, each township advisory council member gets to meet with the board, be a part of the board meeting, and then gets to share their, you know, their information rather than the president always going. I don't know, you know, if there's anything else that you want to add?
And I think what we heard back as a board is from Lynn and then from Ernie, who attended the last meeting, a certain level of frustration, Pam, that they didn't feel like they were actually in an advisory role. And I think that, I don't know where the disconnect is. I haven't been to one of the meetings. I couldn't begin to tell you. We've got both Lynn and Ernie here, and I'd rather allow them to express what that was. But I wanted just to get you in here especially because I think for us to move forward, I think the Township Advisory Council is important to have, and I want to make sure that we're getting the most out of it that we possibly can, and so is Peter White Public Library, to be able to have hear the township's voice of what we need or what have you. And Lynn and Ernie, I'm trying to articulate it. I wasn't at the meetings, and if you would just share maybe with Pam some of the frustrations that you had from the meeting, or so we can see how do we fix it moving forward.
Well, the bylaws for the advisory council say it's the mission of the council of the library to recommend library services and methods for delivery to townships. So all we did at the meeting I attended was Director Christensen went through the packet of financial information, what the programs were that they were offering, EMS training, some kind of maybe the heart machine or something. The new floor had been put in one of the rooms. I mean, it was just basic information. There was no dialogue back and forth as far as discussion items, no proposals, no recommendations. It wasn't what I expected. So I didn't have anything to bring back to you.
Is there a mechanism in place for, say, if Marquette Township has an idea about some program with Peter White Public Library, then is that the appropriate venue for our representative then for Lynn to be able to come in and present or make a request?
Well, and actually that gets done quite often. We have what is sort of the outgrowth of a strategic planning process that the Township Advisory Council undertook several years ago. And one of the outgrowths of that was the Library Links program, where we went around to each township and did outreach events where we signed people up for cards, where we taught people how to use various electronic services. And I don't believe that we've ever held one of those here in the hall. We've held them at Starbucks, we've held them out at Westwood Mall, but we've always been told that there was a conflict with space at the Township Hall.
Yeah, we got your request earlier this year, so yes, and when Randy and I talked about it, I said, why don't we wait till we get into the new hall, and then because now we've got all the space, and we can do whatever it is that, or accommodate anything that you do. So yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
We've been doing that for a number of years, and we've gone to every township, except we've been in Marquette Township, but not tied to the Township Hall. So some people may not understand, that it's a service to the residents. And generally what we do is we do that over a period of 3 hours. We advertise the time. We've been trying to do them in the middle, starting in the afternoon, maybe around 4, and then going till 5 or 6. Well, no, usually around 6 or 7 at night, so that people who, are working can also come to those sessions. We also installed book drops in each township. We did get a grant. Actually, this planning project, we received a grant from the Library of Michigan to provide outreach services to the townships. And so that's when we started doing the outreach events, which I think we've done for the last 3 or 4 years. We also did the book drops in the township. And we also, one of the things that's been a real priority of the Township Advisory Council is to try and come up with ways to better advertise that residents of their area have access to the library. So for, I believe, West Branch Township and Sands and Scandia Townships, they had asked us to do a brochure that talks about, and it says, you know, welcome Marquette, or welcome West Branch Township residents to the Leader White Public Library. It's available. They actually have, some of those townships have packets that they hand out when people come in to sign up their tax affidavits or whatever. So they do them sort of as a new resident packet. Scandia Township also does a newsletter every couple, I think twice a year. And so they ask us to submit an article. You know, they'll tell us the deadline is, and we submit an article. The other thing that we did was an outreach event that we did in August in conjunction with the Marquette County Fair. And so that was probably something that we discussed at
That's for all of them.
the June meeting, the schedule for the fair. And quite a few of the Township Advisory Council members went and did a shift of 2 to 3, 4 hours at the fair. And people thought that that was pretty successful. One of the things that they felt we should do with that was invite the other 5 public libraries in the county to either provide us materials to hand out to people or to have other libraries there to talk about their services, because everybody that goes to the county fair isn't necessarily within our service area. So the group does have projects that they work on and things. For most of them, you know, the newsletters, the outreach events seem to be working. And we have in the past, 1 year we actually did have summer reading roundups at the township halls or different events at the township, where we actually tried to encourage families to participate in our summer reading club. We actually had 1 year that it was pirates was the theme. We had a couple of acting students who dressed up as pirates and went around. So those are the kind of things that the Township Advisory Council does. And, you know, every meeting we may not have a project, but we have these things that we generally routinely do each year. I think the other thing that most of the Township Advisory Council members feel is very important is a lot of them go to a meeting of their township following the Township Advisory Council meeting and give a report. And that could be either a written report. Some of them, you know, actually go to the board meeting. So that's pretty much, you know, what they've done. And certainly if anyone has an idea, I mean, we have an agenda. If anyone has something they want put on the agenda, they can contact me and ask if we put it on the agenda. And that's how the Township Advisory Council has functioned for the last 21 years.
Okay, so in, like, West Branch, they put a pamphlet together to explain, like, what library services were available. That would have been an example from a West Branch representative to the Township Advisory Council, asked to come forward and say, hey, we've got this idea, we'd like to get more information out. And so that would be the appropriate venue. That's kind of where, okay.
That was actually Lori Karpinen, who's the West Branch Township Treasurer, said, you know, she wanted to do new resident packets because a lot of times she sees those new residents when they come in to sign their property tax affidavit. And so that was something she did. So she has a collection of brochures and services, you know, things from the businesses, et cetera. She gives each new resident a packet.
Okay.
And so we did that with some of the other townships. When we went on those township visits, usually we get to have, you know, quite a bit of interaction with the staff, because like on those evening sessions, well, some of these townships only have office hours, you know, 1 or 2 days a week. They don't have a full-time staff. So it's generally elected officials, and so sometimes they'll say, well, gee, you know, if we had a pamphlet, or, another thing that we do is, I think we send out to all of the townships, you know, our calendars, so
Yep.
that they can be posted. There are some businesses that have asked, you know, for a stack of newsletters or calendars or whatever to be sent, and we do that. And that sometimes the Township Advisory Council members will say, you know, I was at such and such a business, and they have a really nice bulletin board, and can you send them, you know, the calendar of events for
Sure.
the month?
Now, Ernie, you were at, represented us for one of the meetings, and do you have anything to add or any questions for Pam?
My biggest concern was, I sat there not really knowing what to expect, and looking at the agenda for that, and it's just like our consent agenda with all the reports in that up front. And to me, you just ask people, do you have any comments or suggestions or anything on that? If not, you move on. I didn't care for going through item and page by page by page. I'm assuming everyone on the advisory council can read. And if they read it, there was no sense going through item by item in that. And as far as advisory, I didn't hear anyone say anything about doing something in the future, planning for something or anything else in that. So that was my biggest question. When I looked at the sign of everyone that said advisory, there was no one making any plans or any suggestions at all. And to be honest with you, I've attended enough meetings in my 50-some years of going all over, and I made a statement to the board, I wouldn't go back. I said, to me, it was a waste of my time in that. There's too many other things I want to do in life in that, and it just isn't there in that. So I just think we have to either look at how it's received by the township here and what's being done there to make it worthwhile for us to go. It's, people just sat there and said very little in that. And even after it was over with, if I wouldn't have said anything, the meeting was done and over with at that point in time. So that's my personal feeling, is that I can read as well as anyone else, and I'm hoping everyone else on that board can read. That's my opinion of it after attending just one meeting.
So, you know, I wanted you to hear those kind of frustrations coming back, because that's what we heard. And again, I haven't been there, Pam, I don't know. But I want to make it work. I want to make sure that we know what's expected, what's appropriate for us to bring forward. I mean, Lynn has to put it on the agenda because she wants direction from the board on how do we move forward, how do we progress from the point we're at now. And I think that's a valid question. We've always said, follow our various boards and committees as we develop the bylaws and to talk about what's it for. If we have a committee that isn't doing anything, then we get rid of the committee. It doesn't make any sense to have it. People have such busy lives. And that's why I wanted to hear so I could ask those questions. I mean, I can see some value, certainly. I mean, things like being able to bring forward things about library services, things that we can do with the township residents, because that's our only opportunity to have a voice within the library is that meeting right now. I mean, I guess you could always anyone could attend a regular board meeting, but I think the concept behind the advisory council is a good one. We just want to make sure that there's value for our representatives getting there. And you know, if we're misreading it, you know, what kind of direction can we provide her when they come back and say, you know, we're just frustrated, I don't know. So that's why I asked you here, and I'm hoping that you can at least hear what some of their frustration was from those meetings. I know it was only one meeting and one meeting, so that doesn't mean how it always is. But I think as a board, we want to be able to formulate what our plan is or what we can bring forward and get the most for our value from our millage, for our residents. How do we make it work? And is the Township Advisory Council the appropriate committee for us to present our ideas and have some give and take and be able to bring back to the township I think Lynn was excited about attending and getting started, and I just want to make sure that we don't lose that enthusiasm. I hate to lose volunteers' enthusiasm, and we just, I think, want to know our voice is heard, that there's some give and take, that we can develop programs within it, and that's basically what you're telling us, is that we can. Has to be put on the agenda ahead of time, those kind of things. Anyone else, questions for Pam? Pete?
Pam, in your September 4th meeting, your minutes, you asked a question about the big boxes. Did you ever get an answer for what that would amount to? How much loss in the big box stores and the tax tribunal? You asked in here, out of your minutes there. You asked Ernie, and Ernie didn't have the figures for you at that time. Did you ever get the figures?
I haven't been provided with those, no.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure we get the best results, like Dennis said, we want the best results of it, and make sure the communications go back. If in September, maybe you should have contacted, well, Lynn knew about it, but Ernie did do it, but I mean, and something like that, is that important?
I don't really think I asked that question. I think it was one of the Township Advisory Council.
Was it? Okay, let me see.
Um,
Oh, Carpenter, excuse
yeah.
me.
Lori is the
Yeah.
treasurer from West Branch Township,
Okay.
and she had asked that question. I think, we have had some members that are on the Township Advisory Committee who have been on there since it started. Cheryl Schramm, who's the treasurer from Sands Township, has served since the very beginning. I think a lot of the folks who do serve, find it very valuable. They like knowing what's going on at the library. I think one of the things that Lynn mentioned was she wanted to discuss the contract or putting the next millage on the ballot in Marquette Township. And, the Township Advisory Council really isn't the right network for that because that's a board issue. And, I guess, I can't say to you if I think that group's valuable. I mean, they've been meeting for 21 years. They've given us some very good feedback. I think they've really helped in a lot of instances to make the township boards feel like they're a part of the library and they understand library operations. But I can't say to you, oh, it's just a wonderful group. I mean, I think you need to talk to some of the members who feel that it's very valuable, and if it wasn't, they wouldn't be there. But they're people who are engaged with the library and appreciate what the library does, and they like knowing about what the library does and what benefits it offers to their residents. Not everybody on that group, I mean, you have another member, Ora Jane Kennedy, who was appointed, and she attends the meetings. I think she thinks they're very worthwhile. I know there are other people in the township who have expressed an interest. I mean, township board members already attend a lot of meetings. Maybe that just isn't the right fit. But I think, if you talk to most of the members of the Township Advisory Council, they feel it's worth their while. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on there we don't have a whole lot of turnover. We have people who have served, over 20 years.
Back to my question, but Lynn was asking for direction, and here I'm looking at this here, and somewhere along the line, the question was asked, and the answer didn't get back, and this is very important to this township, as long as Brighting and the rest of them. That particular, and I apologize for talking to Randy while you were talking, I was just trying to get some figures. That means $13,000 to you, just to the library alone. And that's how important. So I want to make sure that we need your cooperation. And if Lynn is asking how we can direct this thing and make it work, maybe we can do a better job of getting the information back to you and stuff like that too. So.
Well, and I don't think any of you can predict how that's all going to turn out. I mean, we're all kind of in a waiting game, right?
Right.
So I guess that was another point, that we said, if that happens and the tax tribunal is upheld and the revenues from those businesses are reduced, that is going to affect our budget, and we realize that. But that is one of the reasons that we have set the contract with each township based on a millage amount rather than, you know, a per person figure or a flat figure, because if your millage goes up, it goes up for all of us. If it goes down for all of us. But our board's not going to say, well, if you're not going to give us that $13,000 because you lost the tax tribunal, we're cutting off service. We've never said that.
No, but what I was.
You are meeting your end of the contract by paying 1 mil.
Right.
And so that is one of, you know, that's one of the things. There are ups and downs in various, you know, in funding. I mean, we understand that, just like all of you. I mean, we're also looking at the city, which we get over $900,000 a year from the city. City residents pay 1.5 mils to support the library, and then 0.6 mils for the bond to renovate and expand the building. That was a 20-year bond for $4.5 million. So they're paying 2.1 mils, and we understand. I mean, the power plant's a huge issue. I think it's about 55%.
But that really isn't what I'm trying to get at right here.
Right, but I'm
trying to get
saying
at
we-
her, at you, because she's making what direction does she want? Here I'm looking at this here and saying, you never got the answer. We need your cooperation. Maybe you might want to, Peter, like, library might want to write a letter or so to endorse what we're trying to do here, instead of just sitting back and saying, well, if it happens, it happens. That's not the approach that we're,
Well,
you know, we
I
got
have-
over $200-some thousand just sitting back and watching it. We can't just sit back and watch.
Well, but we haven't been asked to write a letter. And I didn't really feel that was appropriate without your I mean, you're in the midst of litigation. I guess, you know, if that's something that you want from us, we would probably be happy to do that. But I also understand how tenuous that situation can be, and I didn't really want to get in there and start mucking that all up. You know,
So
when-
I think what Pete's trying to say is a two-way street of communication. So it's probably one where do you feel that the Township Advisory Council is an appropriate place if we did want to request just a letter of support so that we have?
You can just come to me and I will check with our board.
Okay.
I mean, that's really your board to our board.
Okay.
I don't think the Township Advisory Council has to be.
And that's what we're trying to
involved.
do is define, you know, what it is and what we should expect, what our expectations are, what your expectations are, so that we can maximize what it is. And I think therein lies maybe some of the frustration is, you know, what were our expectations? What are your expectations? What are the other Township Advisory Council members' expectations of what that venue's about? I think it's helped us to more clearly define what we want out of the Township Advisory Council. And I think from our board going forward, we need to probably talk in depth about what kind of charge we're going to give to Lynn. Like, what is it that we want to do for Peter White Public Library services to our residents? It's $209,000 a year in revenue. Are we maximizing what we should be doing? Does everybody know about the services available? Have we done the things that we should have done? And it sounds to me like this would be the one where Lynn can ask to be on the agenda, come forward from this board that says, hey, this is really important to us. We would like to, you know, be able to do this, you know, whatever it is. Maybe it's a biannual project about getting people in about what the information is in the library, how to use more of the electronic stuff. Maybe we do something for the senior citizens, and that's what I'm trying to figure out is where do we do that at? And that sounds like that is where we do that at. As a board, we need to provide for that kind of direction, get on the agenda quarterly and get in there and ask for help and ask for, you know, to put those types of projects forward. Yes?
Well, and I think that's always been the role of the Township Advisory Council, and that's why there's that member's comments at the end, which is what all of you do. You make a comment, oh, I've been hearing a lot about, you know, the leaf pickup. What's the status of the leaf pickup? And then you know, ask your manager to make a report at the next meeting or put it on the agenda, and that's pretty much the way it is. But I think when Lynn came, you know, she started talking about that the township, well, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but what she started talking about was basically the contract between our Board of Trustees and the Township Board, and that isn't really something that our Township Advisory Council is involved with. I think they just felt unprepared. And then at the next meeting, Ernie came and sort of read this prepared statement and then started talking about the tax implications of the tax tribunal. And then people in the townships who are involved as township officials especially were very interested in hearing about that. And that's why they asked some of those questions. But I don't think Ernie really had all of the facts and figures. I don't think he was maybe expecting those kind of questions from people. So, and then he had to leave the meeting early. So, you know, there was quite a bit of discussion after he left, you know, and some of the members made comments about things.
But an appropriate place for him to bring up those kind of comments, yes? I mean, is it for him to talk about the tax tribunal?
Yes, oh yeah, they were very interested
Okay.
because, you know, while, you know, Scandia and West Branch Township don't have a lot of development, I think they're still very interested in that because I think everybody looks at that. They don't just represent their little township while they're on the Township Advisory Council. They're kind of like, we're in this together. You know, we're all gonna work the fair. We're all gonna try and promote the library. We're all gonna try and encourage our township officials, you know, to have library outreach days, you know. And so they don't just look at it as my township. They want to know what's happening in all the townships.
Dennis?
Go ahead, Lynn.
I think what may have, our township board, because we have so many committees that work for us and with us in the township, they're constructive boards that serve us. And I think what we probably misunderstood was, first of all, by the title, Township Advisory Council, sounds like it's the type of group who has discussions, that there's bantering and suggestions and those kinds of things. The intermediary between the board, the library board, of how the function of that happens coming to us. I think that's what we expected. That's what I expected, that it was an intermediary board joining the two, especially by the title. And I think it sounds to me, not that it's wrong, but it sounds to me like the TAC is more of a residential representative type situation that should come back. Say, for instance, I'm not sure why you need two. Maybe it's just for a backup, you know, to have, if one person can't make the meeting, the other one would. But that representative, say Ms. Kennedy, would come back to the board and make her report as to what types of services are new and how can the township help promote those. And in my mind, it's not the type of working representative that we're thinking of, because our boards are more working boards and our committees. And I think it's just, it was a misnomer that we assumed, or I did anyway, that it was that kind of a committee because of the title. And again, I still don't know what kind of direction to have. It's important that our residents know what kinds of services are available. For someone who's thoroughly entrenched and engrossed in that TAC venue, like maybe Miss Kennedy is, that's active in the library and constantly there and aware, she would be the best person in my mind to present to this board and be that liaison. Not that I can't be or wouldn't be, but I'm not there. I would rather either go to the library board meetings and see if I could give that kind of information or get their minutes. I want to make sure that if I'm going to go to another meeting, that it's something constructive rather than just being a pass-through. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish at all anything that they're accomplishing, because obviously It's working and it's important, but as a board member, if we have things that we want to accomplish at a board level, the TAC isn't it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Ernie, go ahead.
The follow-up on what Pete said on the minutes and that, I did provide some information, financial information to them. Whether it was what they wanted or not, I don't know, but no one ever got back to me for any additional.
When was that?
At that meeting, the treasurer from, I don't know, whatever township was there, asked about dollars and that concerning the tax tribunals and that and the effect, and I gave her some figures at that meeting and that.
It may not have been
As I recall,
specific
you
to
said
the
you didn't
library.
have those figures. You
I didn't
sort
have
gave
all of them, I had
sort
some
of
of them.
But I think she asked, you said that you would send them, and that's why I wondered if I had missed something, but,
Well, I think, you know, Ellen, I understand exactly where you're coming from. Your comments I appreciate. And maybe it isn't. I mean, Pam, one last question for you, and that would be, from conversations at the Township Advisory Council, now, are there ever recommendations that go from that council back to the board? I mean, is there a Township Advisory Council report that goes back to the board after the board?
well, the Township Advisory Council members get all of the library board minutes, and the board gets the Township Advisory Council minutes. So there is that. A lot of the things that the Township Advisory Council suggests as far as services really don't need any board action. It's more they ask us to do an outreach event.
It can be handled at a
And
director's
the staff
level.
does it.
Right. Okay.
If there's something, like when we did the Library Links grant, obviously you all know when you apply for a grant, generally the board has to do a resolution, saying that they are going to apply for the grant. So that type of thing would be brought to the board. And that Library Links process was, it was like, I think about 15 months worth of programs and services that we did. And I think the grant was for about $25,000. So the board did have, some oversight on that because they received the reports, and then we had to file a final report that how we had expended the money. But generally, the things that the Township Advisory Council Board wants, brochures, a handout, an outreach event, or, sometimes they ask us to come to a township board meeting and demonstrate some sort of service. I did just do that. I went to every township and made a presentation, except for this one because we couldn't settle on a date because of your moving. The other thing is, frequently at the Township Advisory Council meetings, we also have a staff member come and introduce a new service or talk about their department. And we had just finished that before this year, so we were taking a little break from that, and then, like I said, we were trying to plan the fair, which was early August, so our only meeting for that was June. And then, a lot of that too was just getting people to sign up to take their shift, and then the staff provided the master schedule and then all of the materials. Staff also were at the fair. Usually we had a staff member and a Township Advisory Council member, because if there's a policy question about the library, the Township Advisory Council members generally are not that well versed in the policy.
Okay. When is the next Township Advisory Council meeting?
They'll meet again in December. They meet March, June, September, and December. It's the first Wednesday of each of those months, and they meet at 5 p.m. We meet at the Peter White Public Library in the Lions Room.
Okay.
And the meetings generally last, an hour, hour and a half. They may last longer if we have some sort of demonstration or if there's something that the group is moving.
Okay. I think the board has a much better understanding of what the role of the Township Advisory Council is, and I think it's significantly different than what our anticipation was. I think this helped. The dialogue was really good. We spent a considerable amount of time on it tonight. We have a lot to go on the agenda. What recommendation is not to try to provide you with the information you're looking for at this point, Lynn. I'll put it back
We
on
have
another
time.
agenda. We have till December.
Mhm.
But I think we have a much better understanding of what the venue is, what the roles are, what it's looking for, and you're right, it may be a fit that you're not interested in, and that's okay too. I mean, only you can make that decision moving forward, but as a board, we now understand much better what's expected in that Township Advisory Council, and we can make some decisions based on that. But Pam, thanks so much for coming in tonight. I think it was really valuable, and I wish I could show you, but before you go, the community center where we'd love to set up a date to have that thing. When you walk out, it's open. You can walk back over there and take a look. But we would set something up in that community room over there. If you want to just contact Manager Gerard and find some dates. But really, we're wide open now unless we have something scheduled in that room that we can pretty much accommodate at any time that would work for Clearwater Public Library.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight. We're going to move on to agenda item number 10B, which is consider the township manager's 2012-2013 performance evaluation. As I said, we followed through it and provided the information out, but it just went out this evening, so I know a lot of you haven't had a chance to look at it. When we had sent it out, and you're going to see it in a form that's very similar to what you've seen before, has to do with the question. I think the comments, I have a couple comments on it. First, for those playing along at home and are wondering, the average score was a 3.04 on a 4-point scale. Puts him into above a good performance level, which is the same as he has been for quite some time. I think throughout his career. It's rated on a 4-point scale, 1 being unacceptable, 2 needs improvement, 3 is good performance, and 4 is consistently performs above. Most of the average scores on the questions were good. There's a couple that were lower, and I don't have the questions in front of me, but 3 of them perhaps that were in a needs improvement to good performance, 2.8, 2.7 response, 2.9 response. Some of it, and Manager Gerard did write a response for his personnel folder, which I do have. I guess part of what I saw going through each individual one, and Manager Gerard was provided with each individual copy, although names weren't attached to them. He does have a copy of every one that was submitted, and I do believe every board member submitted it. There were some questions that weren't answered, which surprised me in several instances, and some of those were customer service and management. And I think as a board, if you can't answer those questions, you should ask yourself why. You should be able to answer those questions on how well he manages. One was on fiscal responsibility that got an NA. I think that's an area that, as a board, we have to know the answer to that question. We have to know how we would rate him on that, as well as his management of employees. And I think that, it may have been how a board member read the question and thought that I'm not in a supervisory role, and I'm not sure how I would answer that. I hope that was it, rather than, I don't know, I don't have any idea how he manages people, because as a board member, it's our job to know. We need to know if our township manager is doing the things that he needs to do. And supervisor, I'm here a lot, and I do see more of it than you guys certainly will be exposed to, but I think that you see enough of it on a routine basis, whether it's coming in to check mail or just coming in to get some questions answered, and talking with employees and seeing the department heads and how well he manages those to be able to form an opinion. So I'm hoping as we move forward that those kinds of questions don't get left unanswered with just an NA. I think that the feedback is critical and important to Manager Gerard on how we view it moving forward. But that's kind of where we're at. He has been provided all the copies. It was a 3.04. He did write a written response, again, as part of his personnel file. And Ernie, I know you wanted to spend some time on this, so I'm going to go to you first and allow you to go ahead and address anything that you would like to address.
I think there's a couple of things. One is, there was goals set up for last year. We really don't know if those goals have been met or if they're in the process of being met at this point in time. And the second question is what goals were presented for the coming year? And those are two questions that need to be addressed for myself being a board member, or if I'm a manager of an employee or something like that. You always look at the goals from the previous year and where you stand on that, and those are the time, at that point in time, you start setting the goals for the following year. And we really don't know the status of either one of them at this point in time.
I would disagree with you in that I asked Manager Gerard to provide us an update on his goals when the performance evaluations were submitted to the board members, and told them they needed to have them in by September 30th. And he did provide an update both orally and written to those goals at a meeting.
And then I have to go back and look, and normally I have the whole packet, and I did not see them in there.
And we had his goals, we didn't do it from his performance period to performance period. We had it on a calendar year. We had it for 2013. And that's why I thought that for the 2014 goals would be the same way. We'll go on a calendar period, start January 1 through December of 2014.
When will those be made available, or have they already been?
That's something that the board has to come up with. Just like last time, we compiled a list of what you'd like to see. One of the board members in response to filling out the performance evaluation actually did list several goals that they would like to see. And I think based on the results of your performance evaluation helps you to formulate what goals. You compare those to what we, remember what we want is SMART goals, and they have to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. We have to provide the direction. When we put together a list, last time we formed goals, I think we started off with about 10 or 12. We got it down to 5, and I think that should always be reasonable, 3 to 5 main goals. Some of the things are more policy than goal-oriented. If it's a policy thing, we set policy and move forward. But on the goal thing, I think we do the same thing, put together your top 5 list of what's most important to you moving forward, compare it to last year's goals and how well he achieved those. Are there any of those that need to be carried forward? If we come up with a list of 12, we provide it to Randy before the meeting, and then we put it on an agenda before the end of the year where, once again, he has the opportunity. We try to find some that are mutually agreeable, some that he agrees with we need to do, or some that are just absolutely bored. This is something that we need to see done. But that's the way the process worked last year, and I would envision that I thought it worked well, and I thought we could do the same thing this year. Lynn?
Yeah, I've got the 3 that we narrowed it down to, and I'm pretty sure that Manager Gerard's done all of them, and done them well, succeeded in them. One of the things that I found the most frustrating with this evaluation is every year I can't stand the evaluation. I think if you need a motion, I'm happy to make it. We need a new one for next year. I really don't want to do this one again. I think it's very difficult to fit somebody into the parameters that they put into these qualifications, because sometimes they even contradict themselves in the criteria. But that's something I definitely don't want to forget to do. We've got to come up with something to do, either with points or our own descriptions or something. This is the worst one I've struggled with. And in as much as, I'm going from my own evaluation that I did, but in as much as I know then Manager Gerard was swamped with the move and everything that involved, trying to deal with the tax tribunal and everything else that was going on, the buildings and the financing, and it went off without a hitch in most cases. One of the things that we've said repeatedly is that we need to start some of these processes that we're in the middle of now earlier. And it's got to happen next year. We have to start the budget earlier. We have to start the union negotiations earlier. This is crazy to have such a full agenda that we're down to the nth hour. And that may not totally fall to Manager Gerard. Maybe it's us. But those are the 2 main concerns that I had. with his evaluation, and I even told Clerk Rattari that some of that may not actually be Randy's, but I wanted it to be part of what we talked about and dealt with going forward.
One, the evaluation is written into his contract, his last contract, that this is the evaluation that we'll utilize through the remainder of that contract.
Really? So we have to use this one?
And there's a reason behind it. Part of it, where you guys struggle with those, and if I'm coming from corporate America standpoint for the last 30 years, and this evaluation form is not unusual whatsoever. You have the opportunity to put, it's forcing you to put into a box. You can't give it a 2.5. It's a 0, 1, or a 1, 2, 3, or 4. I mean, you can't do it, and you have to use specific examples to go anything outside of a good performance. The only thing I would object is that you should be able to write specific comments into a good performance as well. But I think that specific comments should be attached to anything. We only put them in if you deviate from a good performance rating. I think those comments should be in regardless in each one. And I think it forces you to put in examples of typical behavior, and it makes you be specific. You can't say, Manager Gerard never gives me what I need. That doesn't mean anything in a performance evaluation. It has to be, I asked Manager Gerard on 5 separate occasions for this information, and I wasn't able to get it. And therefore, this is a needs improvement. You need to respond. That's what you have to look at when you look at these, is that it has to be specific, and they have to be examples. It can't be one time during the year he did this. That's not an example of a specific behavior. It's an example of a one-time behavior, and unless it was egregious, then of course it could certainly be in there. But
some of these some of the criteria that we have to look at, it's got semicolons in here, and it has 2 totally different things. Well, he may have done one and not the other, and even if it's in the good performance part, you can't put any comments in. I mean, it's not easy to use. It's very, I think it's awful. I think it's awful. I've written evaluations. I've done them. I've gotten them. And I think this is the most difficult one I've ever had to deal with. And I guess if we're stuck with it, we're stuck with it. But there's too many semicolons in here. It goes off into 3 different levels in one area, and it's not fair to him even.
But you still have the opportunity to come up with a performance rating on that specific task. They put a list of examples in there. They may or may not have applied to all of them, or if there's something, I agree with you on the comment thing. In good performance, you should be able to leave a comment. Mm-hmm. But you can leave comments at the end of it, and you can refer back to that as necessary. When you get to the end and about certain goal statements, and that it would be a good place for you to put those in, and Anyone else? Pete?
I went through this thing and I sort of evaluated what was going on. I think not to follow up on Lynn's comment, but he did a good job. We had a lot of things going the last couple of years, especially this year. And to get some of the things done that we got done is kind of amazing anyways. It really goes back to his leadership and also the staff, quality of staff he carries in this township. We got a lot of things done. Yes, I made a list on my comment, what I'd love to see. I'd love to see policy governance. I think would take away a lot of things. But there's so many other, I got 2 pages of things in there I would like to see, but we're not going to get at them. Now we can start working on it. We got this. I hope we follow through with the warehouse with the same enthusiasm that we had for the fire hall and the public works department. Get that done, get it over, and then we can start working on different things, roads, vehicles, and even though we still bring them up at the meetings, and we are making progress in those areas. Mm-hmm. So I can't default the guy. Randy and the staff, I think this year did an outstanding job. Would I like to see something different? Yeah. I get frustrated like you on your library board. When I come here and I want to see something done, well, I used to go ahead and just try to get it done, and that was wrong too. So he helped me with that thing, the frustration that we do without things. So, but overall, I think that Randy and the whole staff did a great job this year.
Yeah, but they did. I'm not discounting them for a minute.
Dan?
Well, I agree with Lyndon from the
standpoint that the evaluation, I don't like the evaluation. I don't like the pigeonhole 1, 2, 3, 4. I wish there would be a sliding thing in there so we could have 2.5 or 1 through 10, whatever. But I mean, it just makes it too, I don't know, hard to if you're between a needed improvement and a good improvement, rather than get a 2, should you get a 2.5? You know, you're not that bad. Or if you're better than consistently performs above, should you get a 3.5 instead of 4? I mean, it makes it too structured that and I know it's structured is good, but I mean, I think there should be more flexibility in the point system on it. You know, evaluations are just that. They're for the individual to see what the weaknesses that the people that evaluate them feel they are, and hopefully correct it. It's not a personal thing. It's nothing like that. It's just something that's, if there's a problem that you see, that's what it's there for. So.
Clerk Charlie?
Well, excuse me, I have somewhat of a long history with this item. When I was here 9 years ago in 2004, we didn't, I can't remember if we even had an evaluation form at that time. I remember when I was on the board as a trustee in 2004, in December, I believe we evaluated the manager, and it was basically a closed session. We did it verbally and then came out of closed session and gave, you know, a good performance or what have you. We didn't, I can't remember if we even had anything in writing in those days in 2004. So what happened is with the whole, and this stems back to the whole system of the job descriptions and the step increases and everything, all that stuff at the payroll, the job descriptions and everything. When we had the MML do the big study and come up with a compensation classification system for us, this evaluation form came with it. And it was structured by that professional group to evaluate on a point system. I know it's not very, it's very kind of rigid. You can't put it in between, but it was a professional. We hired them to do the system for us, and this is what came from that. And basically, that's where this came from. And you know, and the reason why it was structured is because it tied with that system at the time. And that's a little history of where this evaluation form came from. Now, I've seen other evaluation forms that are just good or bad. I mean, it doesn't tie anything with it. So I guess I don't have too much problem with this evaluation because it does give you an opportunity to create them by a point system. I haven't seen anything different. I know my own evaluation at where I work was just either a good or a bad or a needs to improve. There's no numbers associated with it. So it's very hard to give constructive criticism back to the employee when you don't have opportunity to comment even on those items. And some of the items don't even, you know, aren't even under like a purview of me. So without being too long-winded, that's where this came from. And, you know, until this board, along with the manager, talk about this, you know, we're stuck with it till we go somewhere else. But like I said, it was professionally done, and it's a tried and tested evaluation form that's in place in other areas. That, I mean, so that's where it came from.
Thanks, Randy. Diana?
I tend to think that the evaluation is fine. And as far as Randy, he's been busy with a lot of things that we have going on now. So as far as what he's done due diligence, as far as I was concerned, as far as all the stuff we've had going on right now.
Okay. Thanks, Diana. You know, I know Lynn and Dan both voiced frustration with it in trying to figure out, you know, how to rate through some of these. I will tell you that, and again, corporate America, and I worked for some of the world's largest corporations over the last 30 years. This is not unusual. evaluation from what I've used. And one of the reasons that corporations use similar evaluations are because without a sliding scale, you have to be specific, and then it also, you know, on a larger scale from the corporate world, any rating that you receive has to go in and get validated in with a group of other people. They take your typical behaviors and they compare those to somebody else's typical behaviors because one manager may rate higher than another manager. We can't do that here. We have one guy, so he's hard to compare to anyone else, right? We have to live with it. You are forced to go into a box and provide examples. That's the point behind it. A lot of it, and we have Roger here, but a lot of it has to do with the legal aspects. Instead of a free-formed rating system of how well the manager's doing or how well any employee's doing, this does paint you into a box so that you have to provide examples of typical behaviors that you are required to look at it in a rigid standpoint. Does he need improvement or good performance? And why, and provide concrete examples of why, so that he has the opportunity to challenge those if we all decided, you know, to unfairly collude and get together and get rid of a manager. There's certainly some legal aspects in there that would give Labor Council nightmares. Labor Council is well aware of what we're using and doesn't have any problems with it. In fact, thinks that this is a very safe evaluation form from that standpoint, to keep you from crossing the line using another form. It, by design, forces you into a box. It says, you know, his work's unacceptable in, you know, time management, productivity, or quality of work, or cooperation and teamwork. I mean, it gives you all these areas, and it forces you, is it unacceptable? Does he need improvement? Is it a good performance, or is it consistently performs above the requirements of the job? When you rate him, you look at these items, you compare those to what his job descriptions and duties are, and then how's he doing? Is it unacceptable? I mean, if there's a string of things that, you know, when you read the examples, again, that's just an example. You can use quality of work, you know, and they have a much bigger content behind it. You know, the extent to which work production is accurate, thorough, professionally presented. Regardless of what kind of examples they give you below, you take the main topic, it's the quality of his work, and then you rate him accordingly on there. Don't get too bogged down into some of the minutia in the examples that they give. It's more about, you know, when you think about his time management and productivity, what are his typical behaviors like? Is his work at an acceptable pace? Is it within reasonable time periods? You know, if you're like, well, most of the time, but sometimes it's not. Well, how important is it that it's not? If it's that important, then it needs improvement, and then let's correct it now and give them the needs improvement, direct it, and then that would help us when we look at some of the responses. When we go to develop goals for the following year, we look at these responses and we say, well, you got a needs improvement, and when we go to set his goals, I'll certainly have that information out, the questions that he had a needs improvement on, and we'll talk about those from a goal setting standpoint. Certainly, you know, half the board members thought that you needed improvement in this area. Let's address it. Is there a goal we can build around it? Is it a policy decision? Can we set a policy that fixes it, or is it a goal that we need to have him work on? That's how you use it as a tool. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Ernie, what else?
I think this is, the only year that I had not made the comments on mine, that I didn't agree with the form. I've done it for how many years, and I just like, we aren't changing it, so I just quit making that comment on that too. So, but overall, I think everything we've talked about is there. I have to apologize on the goals, because I have to go back and look in my file to see if I missed went over and above it, and that I don't know. So I just don't know.
It would have been the first meeting in August, because that's when we rolled out the.
I'll have to go back and pull up the packet and see if it's there and that too. So
Okay.
it's not the first time I've missed things.
Oh.
My wife says it's just. I'm not even going to say what she says.
I think we know, we've all heard the same thing.
So, Pete, you got something?
It's funny that we're talking about this, because I just left the meeting and we had the same discussion. The form's no good, we should change the form. So no matter what form it is, there's always something wrong with it that's not going to fit your, Dennis, he did a lot more than I have, but I mean, just funny, we just left one meeting and the same conversation that we're having right now was at that meeting, so.
It's, you know, and it's tough because, like I said, forcing you to go somewhere where you don't necessarily want to go, but if you did it on a 10-point scale, now you could have a 2.5 or whatever. It's about the overall, how it comes out. It's about individual responses, if that's what you look for. The overall thing, we know that there's 2 questions primarily that had flagged, a high flag on needs improvement. So those are the areas we look at. We'll give Randy the opportunity to respond to those areas, and then we talk about, again, is it policy or is it goal? Because if there's some things that needs improvement, we just need to fix them. And his overall performance is good and has been throughout his career with us at Marquette Township. Then the needs improvement areas are flags that either it's policy or it's goal setting, and if we just need to fix it one way or the other. If a group, you know, majority of the board certainly feels that there's some improvement needed, then that will get drilled down either into a goal. But some of the stuff we fixed with policy. I read some of the comments through the responses that we got from everybody, and some of it's policy. It's not goals, it's policy. And I won't go to the policy governance thing, but policy. We can fix a lot of things with policy, and it's easy for a board to do, to adopt a policy. We can adopt a policy at any time. And when we go to set goals later this year, based upon his performance evaluation, I'm going to highlight some of those, and let's talk about it, because we can set policy as we go, which will help. Once the policy is in place, Randy knows what the executive limitations are once he sees policy, and he'll follow. We've never had a problem with him not following policy. So I think some of that, like you said, bounces back on us. Not necessarily anything that Randy did. It comes back to us, and so we just need to fix it. As a team, we need to fix it. Randy, you want to respond?
I really don't have much to respond to other than thank board members. I think this year all the board members were able to complete evaluations. That hasn't been the case in prior years, so it was good to get feedback from everybody. The one thing I would like going forward would be to have more open dialogue, basically in terms of general dialogue prior to meetings, other than just having our only conversation occurring at meetings. And I realize everybody's busy and you have other work lives and things such as that, but I think it would make a lot of the discussions go a lot faster and a lot smoother if we've had the opportunity to have some discussion outside of the board meeting. That's all.
Thanks, Randy. Anyone else? Anything else? Seeing none. Thanks everyone for your work on that. The next item on our agenda is 10C. Consider the extension of the medical marijuana resolution. As you're aware, we did this quite some time ago and have re-upped it. Is this the 3rd or 4th time?
Actually, this ties with the very first item on my manager's report. If you noted that, the state Supreme Court is about to take up the case emanating out of Wyoming, which is a Grand Rapids suburb, that will determine local government's ability to restrict the use of medical marijuana with regard to the federal laws as opposed to the state law. So it's a fairly important case. We do have a moratorium in place. We've renewed it on a 6-month basis. We did not deal with this at mid-year because there were some other issues going on with the issue at the state level and at the national level, particularly at the state level. So at this point, what I'm recommending is that we renew that moratorium at least through the end of this year. I would recommend through June of next year, pending that Supreme Court case. As you all know, the Supreme Court will hear a case, and it may take 6 months for them to render a decision. So I believe that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of the city of Wyoming and will take a position that federal law can preempt state law in this case, should a municipality choose to go in that direction. So with that, I'm recommending that you simply renew the resolution as it currently exists, simply changing the date to June 30th of 2014.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
The motion is second. Board member comment?
Nope, nothing. I
Okay.
agree with it.
No comment.
Anyone else?
Hopefully this will be the case that answers all of the questions that we've all been struggling with throughout the state for the last 2 years.
We We have a motion and a second before us in the form of the resolution, Clerk Wright.
I will, like all other resolutions, this will be noted in the minutes. And it will be a roll call vote. Trustee Durant,
Yes.
Trustee LaRue,
Yes.
Trustee Trescott,
Yes.
Trustee Pompo,
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Limata.
Yes.
Motion carries. So that will be in effect till June 30th of 2014.
Thank you.
Go from there.
Next item on our agenda is 10D, the manager's report. Manager Gerard?
They just mentioned, we do have that case coming up before the Supreme Court, and we'll be watching that closely. We have had experience with this in the past. We don't currently have experience, but I know that there are others that are interested in providing the services here in the township that will be watching the case as well. The annual conference is coming up in January. As of Monday morning, 8:01, we have all of the rooms reserved at the Grand Traverse Resort, so all board members have an individual reservation. If any of you ultimately between now and then decide that you're not going to be there, or other accommodations are preferred, let me know so we can put those back in the hopper for other folks to use. We're all set for the entire term of the conference. Let's see, we will take care of all of the registrations for board members that indicate a desire to go, so you don't need to really do anything. I do have a copy in the packet of the registration form, as well as the listing of all of the educational programs as they currently exist. They may modify. There may be some additional add-ons coming between now and January, but as of right now, the schedule of coursework and classes is there for you to take a look at to decide which ones you want to participate in. The Affordable Care Act, earlier tonight you heard Buzz and Ron talking about the Affordable Care Act. It went into effect October 1st. As of January 1st, as we've talked about in the budget, it does have some requirements on local governments that are currently providing health insurance. It expands the required coverage to all employees working 30 or more hours a week. As Buzz mentioned, some employers are addressing that by reducing the hours of their work staff below 30. They are seeing the other side of that they're having to add additional staff basically to continue to cover, for the hours, particularly those that are providing 24/7 services. So there are some things to think about there. The budget, as we currently have it built, does take advantage of the change that we made to the December 1st renewal date that did reduce our current premium by about 8%. We will see a 6% increase as of January 1st of 2014 when the federal requirements go into place for fees and taxes. That's how they're going to pay for Obamacare. They're levying fees and taxes on all existing programs of 6%. So that is also added into the budget, and I have built the budget at the 20% reimbursement that the board has discussed in anticipation of that being your direction. If it's not, then we'll adjust it back to the full premium. Beyond that, I really didn't have anything with that other than, as Buzz mentioned, some of the requirements that were to be in place January of 2014 have been moved off to January of 2015. Based on news reports over the last couple of days, yesterday and today, it looks like there may be other deferrals that are being considered. We'll have to wait to see if the federal government comes back online, if it does, when it does, how that all shakes out, because it is part of the discussion. So we don't know as of today exactly what that's going to look like come January 1st. I did list a couple of legislative issues that may have effect on our township. One is the legislation for the rainy day funds, basically, and what that's doing. Every year we have a discussion in the budget about what's a reasonable amount for us to have set aside for emergency use if for some reason our revenue stream were cut off, whether it's a financial crisis at the state level or the federal level or whatever. There is a bill pending to try and identify what a reasonable target would be. Right now it's varying between 15 and 20% in those discussions. As it sits right now, we have a 3-month, between 3-month and 4-month, depending upon what fund it is, reserve that we're trying to build up. And Treasurer Johnson may want to mention what's happening with the principal residence exemption bill, but there is a bill pending, basically that's being moved through the legislature that would modify, excuse me, modify the principal residence exemption, would expand it basically, which would mean that we would be collecting less taxes going forward. So those are things that are currently being worked through the legislature that may have financial impact on us going forward. So just so you're aware. Beyond that, anything any board member would like to have more information on, I'm certainly available to answer any questions.
Any questions from Manager Gerard in regards to development, anything? Seeing none, thanks Randy.
You bet.
Just going to bring up the second public comment period. Any members of the public wishing to address this board may do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. We're going to shift gears here and move into a forum discussion for the budget work session. This evening we're going to be discussing public works. I will ask, it's going to be a longer meeting as we move into closed session. Does anybody need a recess at this point to get organized and get ready for this, or do we?
Just all of a sudden.
Then I would entertain a 5-minute recess if that's agreeable.
I'll move to take a 5-minute recess.
Motion support, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. See you back in 5, people.
Anybody else feeling congested?
Wait.
We might want to open the window.
So much paper.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just dryness in there, but boy.
Okay.
We good?
Yeah.
We'll call the meeting back to order. And the next item on our agenda is a forum discussion for the budget work session for Public Works. Ernie?
Before we get too involved, how far in advance do we want to run the meeting? At 9:30?
I think you should make a motion to extend the meeting for up to 30 minutes.
I'm making a motion to go 30 minutes. Number the meeting by 30 minutes. If we don't make it, we'll do it again.
Oh, we'll make it. We're done. So motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We're starting with the Public Works budget, and generally, as has been the case, we spend the majority of budget discussions on the actual enterprise funds and water, wastewater. We do have Superintendent Page here, and Kirk, I think to kick it off, we're just going to throw it to you for the general narrative about what's different in this year's budget from past budgets, and any other pertinent information that you feel the board should know to kick it off.
Just before Kirk starts, I didn't know if board members would bring you copies or not, but I made extra copies, and basically it's in the format. The first one is water, second wastewater, third solid waste, fourth stormwater as you go through this. So I just stapled them together.
But it's pretty much the same one we already had, right?
It is. It's exactly the same as what you already had. I just did that in case you forgot to bring them or didn't bring them or whatever.
Go ahead, Kirk.
Well, in general, there are no major changes to the obviously there's more of it. We're trying to cover the operations and maintenance, we're trying to pay the debt that we have, we're trying to budget for replacement of the existing systems, and we're trying to budget for the improvements to existing systems. The format is the same as before. Not sure exactly what you all have. I'm guessing you probably don't have my spreadsheets where the replacement improvements was.
We don't have, we do not have those. I think we have everything but that.
Okay.
That would have been good.
Did you want to do it fund by fund, or
I think so, and I think we'd start off with the water budget.
what? Okay.
Did we distribute the spreadsheets Kirk was talking about, the replacement improvements? Did we distribute those this year?
Yeah, we did get some before, but I didn't bring mine.
On replacement and improvement, did we? You did? Okay. Did that come from you or from Kirk? Came from Kirk, okay. I don't think I saw that.
I looked it up last year.
Let's see, let me go to Kirk here. From Kirk.
What we don't use, I can shred.
Oh, you've got him. Oh, okay.
So essentially, the overall budget is pretty close to last year. Total revenues and expenditures. I'll just start from the beginning. The revenues,
I think she's having trouble back there.
and of course, everything is subject to change. The difference between the water and wastewater funds and the general fund is, you know what your revenues are going to be. You levy your taxes, you assess the properties, you know what it's going to be. Our revenues are variable, so it's kind of, it's a best estimate. Connection fees, connection permit fees, for example, in general have been going down slightly. We do have a lot of things going on. I think we're picking up both new construction and redevelopment of some of the existing properties. So I budget, it's conservative, but I do anticipate we're going to have, continue to have large developments. So I did, budgeting actually more than we're probably going to get this year. The charges for services render, that's, that varies as well. One thing that we do, I can project pretty much is private fire protection. That's based on fire lines, individual fire lines, so I know, what I have right now. So that's, and I know what the charges are. And that's one charge I'm not recommending an increase for. Public fire protection, again, that was a negotiated number. We've done a number of studies that have indicated that the level of public fire protection is much greater than 20,000, but the board has previously agreed on 20,000, so that's what it's going to be. Debt service is similarly, I know exactly what that's going to be. Although we are able to, that's a number that this year I'm not changing, but as the development increases, our number of customers increase. Again, it's been board policy to reduce, the debt service charges. That's calculated on an equivalent basis. So, and that is based on, I believe, the size of the service line for the water debt retirement. Interest is still pretty low. Might go up a little bit. So that's pretty much it for the revenues. One thing I left out, of course, is the sales. I'm recommending a slight increase in the water user charges. So in other words, I haven't changed the base rate. So the only thing that's left is the actual user charges, and that's basically paid by the gallon. I kind of fudged that a little bit because our use is going down. But I did this calculation based on last year's use, so that could possibly be overstated even with the rate increase. But again, that's variable. This year, we had more rain than we've gotten in several years, so what that means is the water use goes down. There's a lot of water, you know, it's not consumed, it's poured onto lawns.
And we sold, do you remember the number, what the water report, most up-to-date one was in our packet this evening, but how much less we sold this year than last year?
I do not recall. And the,
So far this year, 6,526,000 gallons less than last year.
6 million gallons less than last year.
6.5.
Okay.
expenditures, we are recommending an increase in the billing function, and also, you know, the changes in the hospitalization. We don't know for sure what that's gonna be, but we gotta put a number in there. Other than that, there aren't really that many changes.
So the biggest impact that you're seeing to this budget from previous years, realistically, is in sales.
Correct, yeah.
You know, even though you're anticipating or you're requesting a slight increase in the dollar amount in revenue and sales, predicated on good weather, because this year, you anticipate we're gonna come in under budget. I mean, if you look at actual through June at 352,655, we'd only be at 7. We're gonna come in at, you know, we're kinda coming in $40,000 to $50,000 less. Based upon, I think it was, the last number I saw was like $53,000 less in sales, that equates to, and even though we sold a little bit more and got a little bump in the last month, the reality of it is, our revenue isn't gonna be what we had budgeted for this year, to the tune of approximately $50,000 because of the long, wet, start to summer.
Right. Actually, this might be a good time to pass out the bill comparison.
Yeah. You guys have seen the fee schedule, which is attached
Could
as
come from
part
fire
of that
department.
packet,
Comes from
and
fire
his
department.
recommended increase to the
You just get
water,
one clipped. You could.
volume rate per thousand is from $6.73 per thousand gallons to $6.97 per thousand gallons. An increase of 24 cents per thousand.
This is confusing because you've got sewer and water different, that's exactly what I was gonna ask you.
Right. What I'm trying to do here is to, I put in the, and this is like a typical residential. Okay, so I put the actual average, and as you see, the average is declining. Okay, we're down to the water 3,627 gallons. That's the average monthly usage. Okay. The sewer's gone down even more because more and more people are purchasing irrigation meters for, you know, outdoor use. So even though there's a meter charge for that, a monthly charge, basically that amount of water is deducted from the sewer bill. So in other words, that's only water that's out, it's not sewer that's out. So we're down to 2,388 gallons, the average wastewater use. So I think you do have like an average bill comparison, and it's based on 4,000 gallons. That's useful for comparing our community to other communities. But again, wastewater uses under that scenario is the same as the water use. What I'm giving you here are real numbers. Okay, so if you assume that next year they're gonna use the same amount of water and the same amount of wastewater that they use this year, that's what these two bills are comparing. So in other words, the water will cost them an extra 88 cents a month, and the sewer will cost an extra $3.91 a month.
So if you're looking at the sheet that Kirk just handed out, going over now, the far right column shows the number of residential customers and then the total customers, right?
Correct.
So when you look at, we're talking about, it's 902 households on water, 643 households on sewer, 1,399 with garbage pickup.
So basically, average households see an increase of about $5.
Yeah, well, I just, I kind of see where you're going with the sewer thing, but unfortunately, when I look at, if I'm looking at bills that people get, and I brought 2 copies of my bills, the sewer, usage is exactly the same as the water usage. So that's gonna drive, obviously, that bill up, because our sewer is a lot higher. And I guess I'm going from the standpoint of looking at mine, and I'm looking at using 2,700 gallons of water with the increase that you're asking for. And by the way, you didn't put in the $15 for the base fees in this bill either. So, using less than 3,000 gallons of water a month, I'm looking at a $100 bill, close to or over a $100 bill.
That does include the base fees.
Pardon me?
It does include the base fees.
No, it doesn't. Oh. No, that's the debt service. That's not the base fee of $9 for sewer and $6 for water.
That is included in those numbers. The 2440 includes the use and the base fee.
Okay.
I want to make this as simple as possible. Okay, so
Right.
you get a water bill, it all comes on the same bill. So this is the breakdown: water, sewer, garbage, debt service, water, debt service, sewer. Obviously, a lot of people, we've got fewer sewer customers than we do water customers. So, there's another spreadsheet that Lois provided that I don't think you've seen, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but you see the breakdown of the residential and then the total. Obviously, the difference is commercial. Okay, the commercial, the revenues that they provide as percentage-wise, and maybe Lois remembers that number, is greater than the actual percentage of, customers.
I recall something over 60%.
I'm following the same line that Dan is. We're running anywhere from 37 to 4,000 gallons a month. I don't know the reason why, but that's what it comes out to be. So that means also we're paying for sewer 4,000 gallons a month. So you really look at this, it's a big increase. And I'm looking at the people on our block from Fair Avenue all the way up. There's no one that has sprinklers or anything else. And anyway, so they're all gonna be hit by this. I see very few in Trowbridge Park that have underground sprinklers or anything else like this. So this is gonna be a tremendous increase for them. I don't care if you're using 2,600 or 3,000 or 3,500. There's no big deviation between the water and the sewer use on these people. Yeah.
Well, there is for the average, and you can't do it for every individual bill. So I mean, if you want, you can extrapolate it out from the 3,600 gallons you wanted, to come up with that number. That will help you.
I just want to make a point that doesn't include the base rate in this bill.
You say it doesn't?
No.
So I'm looking at right now, we're running 100 and some, between 100 and 104, $105 a month right now. All of a sudden, we're gonna be up to 125 to $120, relatively easy, real quick at that. And, I have a difficult time to change that because we have water savers and everything we have. And if I have the grandkids there for a week or two, all of a sudden, my water is gonna go right through the roof.
Well, you can go back to the rate history that you were provided. Does everybody have that?
Mm-hmm.
So even under your scenario, right, which is what that one shows, last year, and this is based on a 4,000 gallon use, which is maybe what you use, okay? It was $114.25. 2 years ago, it was $119.63. Okay, so basically we're going back to where we were 2 years ago.
Well,
And we reduced the rates, 2010, they went down. So they go up and down. We're, like I say, perhaps I should never reduce them, but, for the past several years, that's what I'm hearing more or less.
Yeah, and therein lies some of the issues. You all know I'm a big proponent of not reducing them and to set them and to leave it flat for at least a couple of years as you work through, because instead of responding to seasonal fluctuations, this year it's real simple. We sold 7 million gallons less water. It equals $53,000 in less revenue. We still have to pay for the system. The ordinances tell us how we're going to pay for it. And if that happens, if you sell less, then it's going to cost more. You're going to have to put more on that per unit charge, that equivalent line charge. If you look at the 4,000 gallon billing and what the bill was, you've been there before. I mean, if you look at the wastewater volume base, what's the recommendation to go to this year is from 10.52 to 12.16. The year before we were at $12. I mean, and part of that is we lowered it down again because we had sold a lot of water one year. I still think that, you recall everybody calling in and saying, way to go, thanks for lowering it from $12 to 10.52. If we would have left it at $12, we wouldn't have to make the adjustment now. Everybody was already paying it, and it's, we change it every year based on those fluctuations. It's board's policy to do so, but when you do that, that's why now for 2014, his recommendation is that we go back to basically 2012 rate. Ready?
Along with that, we had that combined study with the city of Marquette, and we allocated X number of dollars, right? Because we did not know what that rate was going to be. Well, when that rate came, it was less than we had allocated or even discussed by 23 cents a thousand. We did not delete that from that rate. We left it there. So they were gaining dollars at that point in time, and that dollars are also overlapped into this year. Because if you remember, go back to when we were discussing back on this budget, that we were going to talk in July about doing something because of this. Well, my feeling is this: you had an overabundance of dollars going in there on the rate in 12 because it didn't need it. That money should have been put aside, but it wasn't. And I don't know where it went. Now we're going to talk about another increase. Some people think about because, well, that's in the past, we don't have to worry about it. Well, I'm not that way. I seem to remember these things that we have talked about, that we had planned for something, we didn't need it, but we didn't adjust the rate downwards, we left it there. So in 2012, we were generating additional funds for the water department.
I could address that.
That money is there. Where it was spent, I don't know. But some of these things, you have to look and plan ahead and put some of the dollars aside for these points in time when you have to raise it more.
Well, I look at it for the first 3 years, we steadily increased the base rates as well as the water rates and the sewer rates and everything else, because the past boards obviously didn't think ahead enough to do it, so we got hit big. We had assumed after 3 years we'd be up to the point where we wouldn't have to worry about it. Last year we actually left it the same, like as Ernie said, and yet this year we're asking for another increase. I guess my biggest problem is and obviously either people are conserving their water or being eco-friendly, and we're basically charging them because of that. if I look at the water fund for August, the revenue fund, we're actually at 71, and that's 2/3 of the way through the year. We're actually at 71%, so we're 5% above what we should be as of August. So we're even with the loss of all that water, the revenues for the water fund is still above average.
Well, again, we
For connections,
reduced
yeah.
it last year. It has not stayed the same for 3 years. I'm basically proposing we go back to where we were 2 years ago.
Well, you're talking wastewater, I'm talking water.
I'm talking both.
We left it the same last year. We could have reduced it, but we left it the same because of the possibility of the city water increase. We didn't reduce water last year.
The city water is one line item.
No, the water rate last year, you recommended a reduction, and we said no because we didn't know what the water rates were gonna be from the city, so we left it the same. We did not reduce rates last year. And that was extra money that was coming in.
Which is a good thing, especially in light of the fact that we sold 7 million gallons less.
But
Right.
now this year, we're asking for another increase again.
Because we sold less. I mean, if
But-
you
Right.
sell less, you have to raise rates.
Well, again, I'll go from the standpoint of the revenue of the water fund right now. We are 5% over budget right now for revenue.
But that's not from volume, that's from connection fees and everything
Well,
else.
Whatever.
Yeah, because we've
That
got
doesn't
growth.
But the
Whatever.
year's not,
Because we have growth going on.
It's still the fund.
the year's not over yet. You got connection fees in now that aren't gonna, we're not gonna be picking up connection fees in October, November, and December.
No, but they were supposed to be that was one of the things, besides the 23 cents that we were gonna use to not have to make the increase. That was the whole point.
Right, and we had less building because of the economy. If you look at where the connection permit fees were for 2013, certainly are below what we would have wanted them to be. Now, next year we expect, because of some projects in the works, that we're gonna see a bump back in those, and we did put those into the budget.
So basically, the problem is, what I see, is not so much the individual rates and what we're gonna be spending that's causing them to have to go up. We have a recommendation to go take the, customer service person to full-time. If you compare where we are now to the projected increase in wages with benefits, it amounts to $31,341.
Yep.
Substantial increase from a part-time full-time.
And that's because of the,
Justification in here as to why that's necessary.
sure there's, the justification is, far and away, the majority of that is the health insurance that we have to provide as of January 1st. Far and away.
For the insurance.
The quarter time that's being added is not a significant cost.
And that person
main-
has not previously had insurance.
No.
There's definitely a need to increase, I mean, we've got a part-time billing person, okay? It used to be full-time. The only reason I agreed to reduce it from part-time in the first place was because she was only gonna be doing billing, but that's not all she does, you know? It's a customer service position. No, she's like 3/4 time, or 80%.
Right.
So we have a
It's a three-quarter.
increase for 25% time on it? I would assume it would be half.
Well,
No, it's three-quarter, the position right now is three-quarter time. So all I'm proposing is that we, as long as we now have to provide full-time benefits, we might as well get the benefit of the full-time position for the quarter time.
Yeah, but it's not 31,000 just for health insurance. That's
The majority of that is spread over three different departments.
when you add them all up.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
wait, excuse me, the customer service, you're looking at the administration. Customer service is the next category.
Yeah, whatever you call it, I just wrote down full-time
Yeah, it's the account clerk, basically. Mm-hmm.
So the budget, for the increases is only for the water portion, is $9,000, $9,100. And, actually, it's exactly the same as this year's budget.
Wastewater is 10,970. 9,700 for solid waste. And 10,900 for water. This is the increase from what we're paying now to what's proposed.
Okay.
All of the
For
whole
customer pay.
benefit.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. $18,632 of that is health insurance.
So what's different than what that person will be doing from 4 days a week to 5 days a week?
Well, she's already here 5 days a week. It would be 5 full days as opposed to 5 partial days. And basically what she's going to be doing is customer service. She's also the backup for Andra, for the reception.
I was just gonna say, we have a whole full-time person
Mhm.
already that we added this year.
Mm-hmm.
She was the backup before anyway.
Yeah.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
The entire
That's
staff
what
was
I'm saying.
backup, yeah.
The part-time was only to do billing. Well, she ended up doing more than billing. Okay, there's no position here that's her backup.
We have a whole nother person that we didn't have before.
Right.
And all these other people have to do.
And all that person is doing is answering the phone and, and assisting people getting where they need to go.
Who?
The receptionist.
Andra.
Receptionist.
Reception is not more than that,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more than that.
Right.
Well,
Yeah,
correct.
but not
So is
necessarily for the
billing
water-
clerk.
water and
where mine
wastewater.
was. The billing clerk
Yeah.
offers me support personally in terms of reporting, okay? So I ask her a question, for example, a lot of these numbers are based on her records, like the number of meters, the number of service lines, and the various sizes, okay? Because I use that to develop this budget, okay?
So we have to.
And that has nothing to do with billing.
No, but wait, it doesn't make sense to have to pay $31,000 more for what, 10 hours more a week? I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Well, you can,
Well, we're not
you can
paying
leave
her-
her at
No.
at where she's at now, and you're gonna pay $18,000 more for nothing.
Because we have to.
Well,
I mean,
Right, so
We're not
the
paying that
reason she
position
was kept at
$31,000.
part-time was because there was a cost savings by not offering her insurance. Now that
Correct.
You don't have to do it. She needs to be full-time. She's needed to be full-time for a long time. That's well-known in this office. It has been known for years.
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't seem logical to me that we have a whole nother person who could
She doesn't do billing.
not.
Well, that could be addressed in somebody else's budget, okay? I'm just dealing with my budget.
Well-
Along with that, when you talk about the duties,
Yeah.
she used to put in all the information she got from the water and sewer usage by hand.
Correct.
Now she's doing it, the service workers are going out and they're taking readings, are they not?
Correct.
So which means it's all done electronically. When they come in, they
Yep.
just zap it and things are updated immediately. That brings up another concern of mine. How much time are those service workers spending to go out to hit all these homes versus her putting it in every month for that? Because you look at the rate we're paying per hour. Because it's gonna take them a long time to get to 400 or so residents.
Right, what I'm trying to do there is increase the efficiency of the data collection, okay? For customers who read their own meters, okay? I can tell you for a fact that 99% of the billing issues are related to inaccurate readings, okay? It's not to say that people don't, do the best they can. A lot of people, that's all they do is, read their meter. And they do it exactly the same time every month. But the majority of people, I don't know where my meter is, I don't know what the numbers mean, maybe I read it, maybe I don't read it. So, and my ultimate goal is to have direct read, okay, which which I had partially before, we would call up a meter. We could call up the meter from here, and it was automatic, and read your meter over the phone. Well, the company that manufactured that system, which is, you know, the largest meter manufacturer in the world, has dropped support for that system. Not to mention the fact that fewer and fewer people are, you know, using landlines. So, but one advantage of moving to the old fire hall is I'm acquiring a tower. Okay, so I'm going to switch to radio read so that we won't have anybody going around. So it'll be totally touchless, if you want to call it that way. But I'm not there yet. That's going to, you know, and that's not going to relieve, you know, it's going to relieve the service workers for doing other jobs, but it's not going to, and it's going to assist, you know, the billing person. But again, we're not there yet. Not only that, the billing software that we use is kind of totally inadequate. All those reporting features that I was just talking about, reports that I need, have been extremely difficult to acquire with the present software. And we just approved recently an upgrade of software, so we're getting a completely different software, but it's not going to hit the utility bill until like next March. Plus, you don't have it yet, so I'm not sure to be totally satisfied. But in any case, my point is, the work needs to be done. You know, and she does the best she can, but you know, if you're only here 3/4 time, I mean, a lot doesn't get done. And again, I don't really see where the $31,000 is for that position, but
Hang on.
maybe I'm missing something.
Let me give you figures here.
Bumping up, we got about 2 minutes left of this meeting before we go into closed session.
While we're in the water, there was something I need to ask of you guys. Last year, during the work sessions, I forget which one precisely, but you noticed on my improvement sheet for the water system, I added Mason's Bluff. And last year, you said, well, why we're just doing Mason's Bluff, why don't we go for the whole deal? Okay, so unfortunately, there wasn't time, you know, for me to get that application resubmitted, so it would be time for me to do it this year. So my question is, were you serious about that, or not?
I know I didn't ask.
Absolutely, we're serious about it. We've got a financial institution that holds $1 million worth of paper on that has 40 home sites that are ready to go get developed, that has a developer that's working with them that wants to develop those sites. It's a part of our long-range planning for our water wells. So absolutely, we're serious about it.
Well, and that's what I was referring to. Were you serious? What I understood the question to be was do the whole well system, second well system.
I don't remember that discussion.
Actually, I thought I really wanted to answer the question about that. That's all I'm asking, because even though there are fewer funds available, but there's still DWRF monies available through the state. I'd have to resubmit the application. And obviously, there aren't going to be the stimulus funds available that there were previously, but it's still a low-interest loan, which is a good way to accomplish big projects. So in other words, what I've been doing is trying to fund, out of funds on hand, smaller projects, segments of projects. So for example, Mason's Bluff, it's just a project, which is part of a bigger project. So in other words, we need the well at Mason's Bluff, but we still need the original well system that we were talking about. We still need mains that connect to a new storage tank, which we don't have. And we still need me to get back to the township, Mason's Bluff. That's what I'm talking about.
Isn't that the project we talked about? We broke it down in steps?
Yeah, that's what, that's
That's
been what
the one
I'm
we're talking
saying,
about
I've
right now.
been doing the
I have a
steps.
hard time hearing you over here, maybe
Okay.
my ears or what, but just, I think that's the program that we talked about. We're gonna do one now, next step would do another one instead of doing them all at
Correct,
one
yeah.
time.
But I'm just saying, if there's the political will, I could go for the whole shooting match.
I want to jump back to the account clerk question for just a second. The movement from three-quarter time to full-time for the account clerk costs in wages $8,800. $21,032 is health insurance.
Oh, that's your 31,000.
That's where 31,943 comes from. So the issue there is the requirement to provide the benefit, the health insurance benefit, because there's two pieces to that. One is the basic health and the other is the prescription coverage that we self-fund. So one is 18,632, the other is 2,400. We now have to offer that to anybody working 30 hours a week or more. So at that point, that was my decision to say, as long as we have to do that, we might as well have the benefit of the full-time for the additional $8,000, $8,800. That's where my recommendation came from, recognizing the need that they've got for the additional clerical support. But far and away, the majority of what you're going to see in all of these budgets that have part-time staff, the majority of the increase is going to be that health insurance with a 6% increase come January 1st at 80%.
Which impacts the general fund budget, which impacts.
All the budgets. Every place we have, we have building and grounds, we have public works, they have part-time staff.
Dan?
If I remember right, last year when we were talking about Mason's Bluff, I think the only thing we discussed was the fact that you were gonna go ahead and apply for the permit. I don't think we discussed anything about any wells or where we were going. That was just the first, because that wasn't gonna, I mean, if you got the permits, fine, but if, I think there's a lot more discussion that has to take place. We move forward with the wells.
That's my question, so that would be a no on the, another.
You're not getting that from the board right now, it's just one board member's comment. We'll have that conversation, provide that direction as we move through this process, Kirk.
Okay.
And, and if the board wants to go in that direction, then they'll have a great time explaining when they lose that discount from the city on why they're jumping the water rates.
3 years.
We are when we're paying that in a
Was-
few years, because
was
we
that
didn't
3
complete our
years?
water well project. Everyone's aware of it, we've had the conversation for 4 years straight, and we're all gonna keep our heads in the sand and at the last minute say, well, we had no idea. And, we'll wait for the board to give you direction on it. We've had the conversation, everyone's well aware of it, we know where we're at with Mason's Bluff. I think you are going in the right direction, putting it here. If they wanna start lining this out like they've done in the past and artificially hold rates down, then that's the direction we'll go in, as long as everybody's prepared to look people in the eye in a few years and explain why they did the actions that they took. I think that you have been moving in the right direction from what the board direction was up till now, but if that changes, that'll change through this budget process. We'll make sure that it's very specifically put into a board motion so that you have it moving forward.
I just like to comment that I think that's, I guess I look at it from the standpoint that, to me, that second set of wells is a very, I understand where you're coming from about the fact that when we lose the discount from the city, whatever that happens to be. But also, if we're talking about looking at our water bills, you want to tack another $11 debt service onto that again. There has to be somewhere along the line where we say, if they're gonna want, if these developers are gonna want this property and they're gonna wanna make it, then they're gonna have to pay for it. You're gonna keep charging the people water rates to pay for Mason's Bluff's wells. I just think it's wrong. When we had to, when I moved here and we had to get water, we had to pay for our water, each and every one. We had a 10-year loan that we had to pay for it on. To strap everybody in the township, another 11 or whatever it's gonna come out to be, debt service for another set of wells for Mason's Bluff, to me, just doesn't seem right.
I think you're confusing two different issues. Mason's Bluff is a standalone project.
Well,
And
the wells are still, you're gonna need the wells to feed Mason's Bluff.
You need the wells to feed
There's a
Trowbridge.
well at Mason's Bluff. There's two wells that we don't own yet, we have
Yeah.
to develop.
What we need the wells for is to supply Trowbridge in 3 years when the city rate goes up.
The
Because
developer
The
has
city
already,
rate's only gonna go up. You guys keep going into this, it's all done by a group that is a non-partisan group that sits down and decides what the rates are gonna be.
No. This is the settlement of the water lawsuit. Our discount expires in
The
2.5
discount
years.
expires, but the rate increases are still under a group.
No. It was originally for 16. It was for the remainder of the initial contract. There's what, 3 years left?
I think so, yeah, I'm not sure how.
So in 3 years, that discount goes away. The price goes up.
The price still goes up from whatever the group.
The price will go up beyond that.
The debt service
This is the base
an
price.
investment, okay, that everybody pays that is on the water system. Same thing for the sewer system, okay? Everybody pays it. If we get new development, they pay their share. And that's an investment. So in other words, that's gonna end.
If you go back,
Like you said, we're already down to 16 years.
if you go
16
back
years,
and
we're
look
gonna
at,
own that water system that we've already installed.
if you go back and look at the water rate study, the last one that was just done, it takes into consideration that discount in establishing the rates. And that discount goes away, the rates go up.
And there's no question that we can produce water cheaper than we have to buy water. And we're still buying water, for half our system.
Clerk Terry?
My comment is the hour is late. I think we should schedule some more sessions and move this meeting along, because we're going to be here all night, and I don't think everyone don't want to be here all night. So ask that the board look at their calendars and figure out when they'd like to schedule some more budget sessions.
We have one scheduled for next Tuesday.
Nope, nothing beyond this meeting. And we have to do it during the course of the meeting, or you have to call a special meeting to schedule those, so I would rather do it now. But we have an additional 2 weeks, that's a 5 Tuesday month, so I mean, we have 2 weeks before the next meeting, or actually 3 weeks, excuse me.
Yep. Have time yet this week to meet, or what's everybody's schedule looking like?
Bad for me.
Let's look at the week of the 21st. We can schedule one for the 22nd, which would be a Tuesday.
A week from tonight, yeah.
Tonight.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. 6 to 8 on the 21st.
Yeah.
Just to kind of wrap this up and put that in perspective, so far this year, we've purchased, in 2012, we purchased almost 61 million gallons of water in the city. That's over $400,000 in purchases at our current rate.
But we've got $1 million water budget and $1 million sewer budget, so $2 million this thing a year is not cheaper than $400,000. In my mind, it's not cheaper to have our own system.
Well, it's like leasing a car. Are you further ahead leasing a car or buying a car? It's the same thing. You own it, it's an asset, your cost center goes away.
So 22nd, 6 to 8 p.m.,
Yep.
which is Tuesday, a week from tonight. I would comment that the 29th, it will not be a good day here because I have the clerk's meeting.
Well, we can invite them in to help us.
I don't think,
Something later after the 22nd, the 23rd or 24th? That
What
Wednesday
did
or
we say?
Thursday?
What's
Wednesday,
the next one?
I'm out.
Yeah, no.
Thursday,
Oh, that's what we're working on next?
Yeah. 23rd is out. We got 6/22 is 6 budget.
24th?
22nd, that's a Tuesday, Dan. 21st was a Monday.
So no.
Yeah.
the following Monday on the 28th.
Monday, the 28th?
Trans City Chamber, oh.
Excuse me, did you already schedule next Tuesday?
No. Well, we're
There's
not,
nothing else on the agenda.
No, that's it.
not yet, because I have to make,
I'm gonna say, if you guys can't get it done in one more meeting, you might have to do it without me.
How about the 29th instead of 28th, Tuesday instead
That
of a
would be
Monday?
better for me. 'cause
Secretary has a conflict.
Oh. How about the 30, no, I'm done.
How about the 30th?
30th?
30th on a Wednesday.
I'm all done for the end of the month then. For the 30th, 20th.
Well, the 29th, yeah, I don't know what the ending time's gonna be in that meeting, because we have a presenter, so I can't vouch.
Let's just, can we just do the 22nd and everybody have their schedule for the 22nd to try to get in after that, or do you want to just put it for the 29th and then we'll just play it by ear and you see your meeting? Or the 28th?
Well,
Who
you don't
can't
have-
make the 28th? Who's got a conflict? Diana and Pete?
29th I can.
I think if it's 7:30 and the 29th, it'd probably be okay. I think we'll be done by then, so.
Seven,
7:30.
In November, you run into a lot of holidays.
Yeah,
Hunting season.
what about the 29th if we went from 7:30 to 9?
that's fine.
29th,
Yeah, Tuesday,
and 29th, 7:30 to 9?
9:30.
7:30 to 9:30.
No, we'll do 7:30 to 9, and from
Okay.
there, will be the next week will be the board meeting, and then we can
All
schedule
right,
any
7:30 to
additional
9
meeting.
and the 29th.
Are we
So
me-
I'll,
Do we have one on the 22nd?
Yes.
6 to 8.
so I'll make a motion, we schedule, budget session for Public Works. Well, starting at least for Public Works on October 22nd from 6 to 8, and, which is a Tuesday, and Tuesday, 29th, 7:30 to 9.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Aye.
All right.
Supper that night.
Motion for 10:22, 6 to 8, 10:29, 7:30 to 9. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
I'll get them posted, Public Works. Schedule them at least initially.
Thank you. Just going to bring up additional comments from board members if you have any. None?
None.
Then I would entertain a motion to,
I move we go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268, subsection C, for strategy negotiation sessions connected with negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement. Either negotiating party request a closed hearing.
Support.
motion and support for moving into closed session. Secretary?
Secretary is yes. Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Durant? Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Leamanton.
Yes.
Motion carries in closed session at 10:15 p.m.
We are in closed session. Thank you.